Hi, everyone. Can you hear me?
Hi, Councillor Cameron. Yes, we can hear you.
All right. I'll just see how this goes. The internet's been dropping out, so I hope for the best.
Thank you.
I'll turn my video off to save bandwidth during the presentations.
Understood. Thank you.
Yeah, it's turned on. And then after the public forum, I'll come to it.
Good evening and welcome to tonight's public forum being held in the council chambers for this Monday, the 12th of August. We might note that this public forum is being audio recorded for administrative purposes. By speaking at the public forum, you agree to being recorded. Please ensure that if and when you are speaking at this public forum that you are respectful to other people and use appropriate language. Albury City accepts no liability for any defamatory or offensive remarks or gestures made during the course of this public forum. Conflict of interest declarations received? Any through? Thank you. There has been none received. We'll move on to our speakers. Our first speaker tonight is Joanne Diver in relation to item CM 9.1 on the agenda, Conservation Zone Lands Review. Joanne will be speaking against the motion. Good evening, Joanne.
I'm actually speaking for the motion, so we want it to be rescinded. Is that correct? Yeah.
We do have a rescission motion and then we also have another item on the agenda.
Okay, so I'm not quite sure about the format, but I'm definitely for it to be, the motion to be, to maintain the motion from 2 weeks ago. Right, okay. Okay, if my first slide could go up, great. What is a gateway determination? It is a document that sets out the conditions for council to proceed with the processing of a planning proposal through the planning system. Somewhere between, sorry, Somewhere between 2020 and 2021, council decides that they want to change the Albury LAP. Council ask only developers, planners, the state government and council themselves to nominate land to be reviewed by the consultants. Why was this when those organisations were likely to benefit financially from any zone changes? Council said it isn't council's process to go out to all and sundry to begin with. Why was this? In October 2021, consultants commissioned by council identified 534 conservation zone changes. Surely council would have thought, good grief, we're going to need help in order to effectively and efficiently consider anywhere near this number of changes. Council doesn't twig. Why didn't council get in additional resources in October 2021? In November 2021, council prepare a report for councillors to consider the planning proposal. They vote to decide if they agree that the LEP should be amended as proposed within the report. Planning proposal approved by councillors and is forwarded to the Department of Planning. This is 22nd of November 2021. In July 2022, council submits a planning proposal to the Department of Planning. When was this revision approved by councils? Council laws. Is it even valid? There's no record of this on the Gateway Determination Report. In September 22, the department issues a Gateway Determination, the document which sets out the conditions for council to proceed. In November 2022, the review is out for public exhibition for the first time. Finally, conservation zone landholders now know about the review. So let's be clear on this. The only land that is being considered in this planning proposal the council have the Gateway Determination for is the land that was nominated by developers, planners, the state government and council themselves, somewhere between September 2020 and November 2021. Organisations that are likely to benefit financially from any zone changes. How does this happen? Submissions are assessed, council reports submitted to councillors. Sorry, this is not going right. Okay. Submissions are assessed, council reports submitted to councillors for approval. Today's agenda states that the Gateway Determination is only looking at land parcels that were assessed for review by the consultants and presented to the councillors for approval. Again, this is the land nominated by the developers, planners, state government and council themselves back in 2020-2021. Council added that any landholder may seek a review of the land zone via planning proposal at any time. This is true if you can afford the $34,000 in fees. Why didn't council offer the same opportunity to private landholders of conservation zoned land back in 2021? Sorry, this isn't working. Slide 9, in August 2024, I was told by council that the zoning review was not contingent on biodiversity certification and vice versa. Yet the Gateway Determination says that the need for this planning proposal is so that we have a significant net increase in conservation zoned land that is required by biodiversity certification issued by the Minister in February 2021. So the extension of the biodiversity certification is dependent, basically, I believe, on this conservation land review. I was told in November 2022 that I and others could make submissions for any conservation zoned land within Albury City. At no stage over the past 20 months was I told by council that I was not eligible. It wasn't until this week that council advised that the Gateway Determination did not include land that wasn't nominated by consultants back in 2020-21. How have I engaged with council for close to 2 years and not been told once that I and others were not eligible? Why has there been such a lack of transparency and communication with the public throughout this whole process? Today we find ourselves here again. Public submissions have been assessed, council reports submitted to councillors for approval. The Gateway Determination states that council should not be allowed to become the local plan making authority as they own 60 plus lots that have been reviewed. The CEO's recommendation to councillors aims to deflect the focus away from council errors. It says if we extend the gateway determination, it will cause delays, cost people money, especially those who have commissioned independent advice and are eager to hear of the outcome. I agree. We wouldn't have had to extend or alter the gateway determination, experience delays, or the people have had to commission independent advice if the council had done its job properly in the first place.
Joanne, we've just reached your time limit.
And I'm
Is there a-
finished.
You've finished?
Although I am disappointed that this didn't. Oh, now it's clicking over. Okay.
Well, we'll give you an extra 20,
No.
30 seconds if you need to refer to your slide.
No, that's fine. Thank you. Any questions?
Councillor Callaghan.
Thank you, Mr. Driver, for your presentation for a second time. I appreciate you coming back. I've been in communication with you since this, and I've expressed my concern around the communication being quite woeful as well. Joan, you're very disappointed at the process. Moving forward, I suppose, what would you be recommending? You're about to finish off, and I'm sure you're about to give us a recommendation of what you'd hope to see moving forward.
Yeah, moving forward, I would like to see council's processes really monitored very, very carefully. This has been woeful, this whole process. And I feel for anybody here who is following a planning proposal right now, whether it's for a house, a 6-storey units, or whether it's to change the LEP, that's really important. So I don't know how you're going to do another planning proposal like this without even knowing, without me being told in the last 20 months that I wasn't even eligible for this. Are you keeping secrets? I don't know.
We can certainly address questions you've raised during debate at
Great.
the council meeting, Joanne. Any other questions for councillors at this stage? Thank you, Joanne. Our next speaker is John Elwood in relation to CM 9.1 Conservation Zone Lands Review, speaking for the motion. Good evening, John, at your leisure. Feel free to adjust the microphone if you need to pop it up higher.
Good evening. Good evening. Can you hear me? Okay. Good evening, Mayor King, councillors, staff, and people in the audience. I would like to strongly support the motion for the Conservation Zone Lands Review so that it can go forward. I really request that the councillors look at themselves to try and find some way forward to make this process go forward. There have been in the order of 534 properties that have been considered. I can't go into the technical merits that the lady has just presented on, but in reality is there was probably never going to be a situation where everybody was going to be happy with an outcome. But there are a very large number of people affected, and it is really important that we are able to go forward. I was also mindful from the start of this process that if what we were requesting didn't work out, that there were always the normal planning processes that we could fall back on. And if we wanted to object on the way through, that our consideration would be taken out, and just like everybody else, it would go through a normal planning process. I'd like to give you quickly our perspective and how this has affected our family. I would say time really does matter. I had a quote last week: every day a decision isn't made, it costs somebody something. When this decision was deferred and the thing put on hold, it really did cost us. For us, the impacts on my wife, Frances, and our family, we drove 4,500 kilometres since this council meeting to get here to talk to you. We have spent $20,000 of our retirement savings to technically support our submissions. Other people during this period have also had the opportunity. I'm 67 years old. never had an issue that has upset me more than this one. And I've had a hell of a lot of issues that could have upset me. The process for me here started about 8 years ago. It's been 18 months, as you've been told, since it's closed. Part of this delay is alignment with council, internal within council, government agencies. There's a very large number of involvements and interactions that you've had to align to get this process happening. So not only is there a financial issue for us, I can't stress how much these delays have emotionally affected ourselves, my wife, and our family, and our grandchildren. Basically, all we want to do is live out of retirement with the kids on our property, which we should be entitled to do. And once again, we've delayed. Council didn't know that what they put in place recently was going to cause the delay it has. But accumulating that with all of the preceding delays that have gone through, it basically for us was the straw that broke the camel's back and was why we're here talking now. I would suggest we're not alone. There are a large number of other people that are also adversely affected. Just a couple of quick things. If this doesn't get rescinded, if you don't get the motion going forward, there will be, it's not a 28-day process. As I've outlined to you previously, it is a long process. It will start again with the gateway determination. It's going to cost council staff and us and everybody else a lot of money going forward. The council signed off on a biocertification process, which enables development in Albury and the broader Albury. That biocertification process was contingent upon a timely review of these environmental lands. If you can go forward with this, you will enable that to occur. If you don't, the whole thing will be put on hold again for an indeterminate amount of time. And I know it's not particularly anyone's fault, but I really don't want to see a large number of people, including ourselves and our family, adversely affected for a few, when we knew from the start that if it didn't work out, there was the normal statutory processes that you would go through. So all we ask is that can you put something in place to be to fair as many people as you can and let us live our lives with our family and grandchildren and go on with our retirement rather than being caught in this thing that's just going on forever. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Any questions, councillors? Councillor Callaghan.
Thank you, Mayor King, and thank you, Mr. Elwood, for your presentation tonight. And I'm sincerely sorry. I know you said it's been going on for 8 years, and from my understanding, the process has been 6 years long. That's clearly caused you and your family lots of anguish. But I suppose as a councillor group, 6 years of work, we had six days to analyse all of this work. My question to you is, moving forward, if you were successful in the decision tonight for it to be rescinded, what does it mean to you and your family, and what are you hoping to do?
What this means to our family, I can go on with my retirement, my wife can, but we've got a couple of kids that are now grown, same age as yourselves. They've got grandchildren, and our sincere hope in our retirement is that we can grow old with our family and our grandkids. That's what it means to us. In respect of what the first thing you said, I can't help with your processes to date. I understand them. I understand what's occurred. But for us, it means such a thing. Can you imagine 8 years? We didn't have any grandchildren at the start of this. In that period of time, you have grandchildren. You go from the age of 59 to 67. I haven't got that much time going forward to muck around with time just extending. Just don't have it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions, councillors? Thank you, John. Our next speaker is Scott Hunter in relation to CM 9.1 Conservation Zone Lands Review, and Scott will be speaking for the motion as he makes his way. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks very much for the opportunity to address council tonight. We wholly support what the council's done with the corridor review. Been working with Chris Graham for 6 years by sounds to try and get our green zone shifted to where we've got our green zone on our property, and also the Judd's property is also affected. We when we took over this land from the government 20-something years ago, there was a highly eroded creek in our on our country there, and we worked with the CMA and the Albury City Council to get it locked up and rehabilitate it. We're very keen bike riders, and we're quite keen to see a bike track there through there in the future. Once might be 50 years down the track, but who knows? The advice from the CMA back in those days was to set aside a 40-metre corridor along this creek, which is what we did, and destocked it, put the trees in, and council were out at the time, and we they advised to fill the creek with timber to rehabilitate it. So any dead fall from anywhere on the property goes into the creek, and what that does is, because it was highly eroded and degraded country, and it allowed weeds or anything to grow in amongst the timber and rehabilitates the topsoil, which worked really, really well. So there's a couple of shots from showing where the creek was quite degraded, and it's coming good over the years. So but what we find now is, with this review, council has shifted the green zone from a different part of our country onto the creek, which we really appreciate. But they've also now changed it from a 40-metre wide zone to proposed 80 metres. So we've set aside 40 metres. Yes, and we would like to see it go back to the original 40 metres. The reasoning for that is, so the dry creek in this area, let's go back to this picture here. You barely call it a creek. We're about probably 300 metres from the very, very, very top of the catchment. And so a broad 80-metre wide zoning across the much larger creeks further down in the system, and ours doesn't seem to make a lot of sense. So we would like to see it go back to the original 40 metres that we were advised, and the work, the huge amount of work that goes into, anyone who owns land here would know how much work goes into doing this sort of rehabilitation. So the real rehabilitation progress that we've made is, now we've put all the native species back in. We've now got a large population of frogs, birds, and many other native faunas. The native flora in the area is starting to self-generate. So we're getting, the gum trees are starting to self-propagate, and that sort of thing is starting to occur. So within another 20 or 30 years, it'll look like native, just back to the way it was when the Bells took it over back in the 1800s. So that's what I'm hoping anyway. Yes, and so we really support what council's done here to get this green zone shifted from a different part of our property to here. That's such an important thing for future generations. we would like to hopefully see that we can get it back to a 40 metre wide zone instead of 80 metres. Thank you.
Thank you, Scott. Questions, councillors? Councillor Callaghan?
Thank you for your presentation, Mr. Hunter. You're clearly spending a lot of time and money in investing in conservation of the land. You haven't really been specific why you want to reduce it another 40 metres though.
Down to 40 metres?
Yeah, so from 80, it was 40, it's gone to 80. Why do you want to bring it back to 40 if you're so invested in that conservation space and zone?
Yeah, what we can see that we need to achieve with this country, the 40 metres does it. So a connectivity zone, you know, through from Bells Reserve all the way up to the top of the hill. Because there's such a tiny creek there, a dry creek, it's not obviously not a running creek. 40 metres is ample. It does all it needs to do for connectivity of wildlife and flora and fauna. So,
Thank you.
For my question, Councillor Bowen.
Thank you for your presentation. Thank you, Mayor King. Just wanted to clarify. So 40 metres either side of the creek, or 80 metres either side of the creek. So is it 40 metres each side, or and 80 total?
so we've fenced off 40 metres in total, and the proposal is that it's 80 metres in total.
Thank you. Just wanted to clarify. Cheers.
Scott, what reasons were you given for the 80 metres instead of the 40, presuming you were had a different perspective? What was the advice that you received about that?
Nothing specific, except for we can see it's a fairly general thing right up through the catchment. So, yeah, no specific reason, I don't think so.
Thank you. Councillor Callaghan.
Sorry, thank you, Mayor King. Just to follow up, you mentioned that you'd fenced off. So where the Dry Creek Red is, you have fenced off the 40 metres for that corridor at your own cost. You've fenced it.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Hunter.
If there are no more questions, thank you for your presentation.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Our next speaker is Stan Stavros in relation to CM 9.5, the Albury-Wodonga Regional Hospital project, speaking for the motion. Good evening, Stan. Welcome.
Good evening. Thanks for the opportunity to make a presentation to the council. Appreciate it. I represent Better Border Health Limited, which is a membership-based community group. We fully support the motion put by Councillor Callaghan. However, we are disappointed that it's taken so long for the motion to be put and questions asked of the government. Notwithstanding the above, the motion before Albury City Council is crucial for addressing the pressing and future healthcare needs of our entire border community. By releasing detailed information timelines, the community will be better informed about what this investment will deliver, ensuring accountability and fostering trust in the project's objectives. We stand with the Border Medical Association calling for a new hospital on a new site, which effectively means a greenfield option. Our cross-border community is one of the 5 largest inland communities in Australia, behind only Canberra and Toowoomba, and on equal footing with Bendigo and Ballarat. But it is nowhere near on equal footing when it comes to funding of our cross-border health service. We are the only cross-border health service in Australia, which is fair enough when you consider that we are the largest cross-border community in Australia. The issue we face is that it's not funded appropriately. Analysis I did last year indicated that our operational funding on a per head basis was approximately 75% of what Ballarat and Bendigo receive. Fairness and equity in health should not be based on postcodes or electorates. So how do we compare to other builds? A quick snapshot reveals that from a New South Wales perspective, New South Wales' $225 million allocation to our hospital compares to what it gave Wagga, $431 million, which is a population similar size to Albury. Griffith, $250 million, which is half Albury's population. And Eurobodalla, $330 million, which is 3/4 of of Albury's population. From a broader perspective, our combined $558 million funding, which really only constitutes $450 million in new money. I say only $450 million a lot, I admit that, but yeah, but in terms of hospital builds, it's not really. But our $550 million, our debatable $558 million compares to Bundaberg's newly announced hospital, 1.2 billion lower population hours, combined population hours. Bendigo, 1.1 billion several years ago. I know that for a fact because my cousin was involved in the project. Shell Harbour, $780 million, which includes $128 million from the federal government. Tweed Heads, $723 million, which was recently completed in the Greenfield site, first announced in 2017. Therefore, it took 7 years to complete from the day it was first announced. What does this tell us? It tells us that the comparative building cost per head of population is between $8,000 to $10,000 per head. What Albury-Wodonga is getting is half of that. How is that fair and equitable? I know the state government bureaucrats will say that our build is based on data, but exactly what data? And good luck getting the data that they rely on if you ask for it. It's also interesting how the language from the state governments has gone from Mary Ann Thomas's largest ever in regional Australia, as per her letter to the Border Mail editor on April 4, 2024, to the most recent offering from New South Wales Health of it being one of the largest projects currently on the way in New South Wales. Albury had the chance to provide greenfield options during the 2021 master planning process. And according to page 65 of the 2021 master plan, decided not to, whereas Wodonga did. We implore Albury to revisit this and provide some greenfield options as a matter of urgency. Since the announcement of the brownfield option by former premiers, Dan Andrews and Dom Perrottet in October 2022, what have we learnt? Not much, because for close to 24 months, our community has been kept in the dark. It's only through the forced uncovering of documents by Amanda Cohn and questions are asked by her at Senate's estimates that we now know that for $558 million, the debatable $558 million, by the way, we will end up with hardly any extra clinical capacity, and that by the time the project is finished, we will be no better off than what we are now. In fact, we'll be more than likely worse off during the construction phase. We now certainly know there won't be a promised helipad. What else will be cut? I did time this and it came to 4 minutes and 30 seconds. Now,
We'll give you an extra 30 seconds leeway.
Yeah, so I will finish off because I know there are other presenters and they will cover off a lot of the stuff. So, yeah, I appreciate the opportunity for presenting.
Thank you for your presentation. Councillor Baker.
Thank you for your presentation, Stan. Really, my question, and I've had it all along, is how are we going to get the funding that should be, ours? Where's it coming from, and what gives you hope that's there? And that's the hardest thing of the whole lot.
Well, yeah. Look, Stuart, that's a fair question. I have personal opinion that my personal opinion is that some money has to come from the feds because there is a history where feds do provide funding to hospitals. And I think it would help a lot if there was a collective voice in relation to it. I'm not just talking Albury and Wodonga councils. I'm talking about all the councils in our regions. Albury constitutes the catchment area of Albury. Albury-Wodonga Health is 300,000. Albury is 60,000 people, close enough to. We're 20% of the overall catchment area. So we've got to bring those in. We've got to advocate hard, and we've got to be on the same page and push it hard. If they are allocating those sorts of dollars to other communities and other projects, then I cannot see how we could not really force the issue with them. That's just my view.
Thank you. Councillor Callaghan.
Thank you for your presentation, Mr. Stavros. You mentioned ambiguous data. And do you believe that the cross-border anomalies lead to this grey data? that we're seeing?
There will be other presenters. They might be better placed to answer that. But yes, I was going to say in what I thought was my 5-minute allocation, which was a 5-minute allocation, but I only got halfway through, that I do believe that there is an intent to basically destroy might be the too strong a word, but I'll say the cross-border health service go back to what it was before. Wodonga being one service, Albury being another service, ministered by Wagga and Shep. And just a lot of the silence that's going on leads me to believe that, because nothing has been passed on to us at all, other than Amanda finding all that information, we'll be further in the dark. Yep.
Thank you, Mr. Stavros.
Stan, just a comment in relation to the approach of our joint councils in terms of meeting with the feds and seeking meeting with the health minister. You're privy to that? You sort of appreciate that as one approach that we're advocating as a group? Without
a doubt, Councillor King or Mayor King. I think that's the right way to go. I also think Border Medical Association has got a lot of good information, and so does BBH now, Better Border Health. And I think a collective, I know you're going caretaker mode, but a collective workshopping of this and analysing of the real data, because, we can be fed a lot of stuff by the health bureaucrats, which is only really, I don't know, it's debatable as to whether it's true or not. Yep.
Thank you for your presentation.
Thank you.
And candor. Appreciate it. Thank you. Our next speaker is Jeffrey Hudson in relation to CM 9.5, the Albury-Wodonga Regional Hospital Project. Jeffrey is speaking for the motion. Welcome. Good evening.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Good evening, councillors. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak to you this evening. Thank you in particular to Councillor Callaghan for bringing the motion. My name is Jeff Hudson. I'm a nurse. I'm the branch president of the New South Wales Nurses and Midwives Association at Albury Hospital. I'm here to represent my nearly 500 members because the decisions around the hospital redevelopment really significantly impact on us. In 2022, we passed a motion as a branch calling for a greenfield redevelopment, a single site hospital on a new site. And so I'm here to speak in support of the motion. In particular, with regards to point C, we have an absolutely critical need for additional capacity, bed capacity, as soon as we can get it. The deficit that we have every day affects every aspect of the patient experience, emergency department wait times, surgery delays. Frankly, the quality of the care that they receive is affected by this. You've probably heard the statistic that we start every day with a deficit of between 30 and 70 beds. In reality, what that means is incredibly long wait times in ED because we don't have beds for people to go into. It means that the planned surgery waiting list of Albury-Wodonga hit 3,378 in the March quarter of this year. By way of comparison, Bendigo Health, similar size catchment, had around half that, 1,737 on their wait list. This is simply because we do not have enough beds. We do not have enough beds for people to have operations and then go into those beds to recover. Our surgical wards are full to capacity. In fact, we have a former tea room off one of the surgical wards, which we are using as a 4-bedroom. Our recovery unit, which is where patients come to once they've had their operation, is also used as an overflow unit for admitted patients. There are times where we cram up to 16 patients into this space, which was never designed to care for admitted patients. In fact, the beds can be crammed in so tight we can't open the door to the fire hose because there are so many beds in the way. All of this severely impacts on the morale and the psychosocial well-being of the staff in the hospital because we want to provide care to our community and we are simply not able to provide the care that we want to provide because of the lack of beds. Now, you've probably heard the 70 to 30 deficit number before. What you might not have heard is that Albury ED actually has a dramatically lower admission rate compared to EDs of a similar size. So Albury ED has an admission rate of 26%. Other EDs of a comparable size, that rate is 35%. This means that if you're bringing your child or your elderly parent into ED and they need a bed, they may not get it. And so the doctors are forced to come up with a plan to send you home with. Now, this has a huge impact on the health of our community, and it will continue to get worse as our community grows. And so this is why we are so desperately in need of an interim solution. It has to be temporary, obviously, but we need demountables. We need a step-down unit at the Mercy. We need anything. And as nurses, we are crying out for this. I think the fact that these applications for these things have already been made to the state governments and that they haven't been forthcoming with them shows how deeply unserious they are about solving this problem for our community, actually. And they think they can get away with it too. This is the biggest issue. Politically, they just think, well, we can get away with underserving this, as we've heard, 5th largest regional community in the entire country, and we're getting second best. I did want to briefly address point A. Look, we already know that what has been committed is not enough to achieve the primary goal of the project, which is a single site hospital. We know that subacute services will remain in Wodonga. We know that we will still have theatres in Wodonga. We're probably not going to get a helipad. We know that we're not going to get the additional bed capacity that we need to meet not just the deficit that we have now, but the growth that we are going to see into the future. So frankly, I absolutely welcome the call for the additional information from the state governments, but we already know that what they're proposing is not enough and that a greenfield is frankly the only solution. As nurses, delivering care in a construction site for the next 6 to 10 to however many years it's going to be is frankly a nightmare scenario. We know that the completion date has been pushed out to 2030 at the soonest. That's 6 years. We just heard from the previous speaker that Tweed Heads went from announcement to doors open in 7 years. We know that the clinical services, the planning process started in 2021. We could have started back then. We didn't for whatever reason. Again, I think simply because the state governments don't really care about this community. They've proven that time and time again. And really, the knockback of the funding for the additional beds is proof positive of that. So look, I commend this motion to you, and I hope this presentation has been helpful.
Very helpful. Thank you for your presentation, Councillor Callaghan.
Thank you, Mayor King, and thank you, Mr. Hudson, for your presentation. I actually have a couple of questions. Firstly, simply disgusting that a tea room is now a 4-bedroom hospital room. My first question is in regards to beds. There's been a lot of narrative around beds being beds and changes to points of care, and then it changes to beds being in out-of-home care. Can you be specific about what the needs of a hospital bed is? Because I think they're trying to, my understanding is it's a shifting into the home, but we really need beds in the hospital setting is what you're saying.
We absolutely need beds. The thing about a bed is it's not just a bed, it's a space which has oxygen plumbed to it. It's a place that has all of the necessary electrical equipment that we need to monitor the patient. I'll give you another example. The overflow unit, which is formerly the day procedure unit, which we use as just additional space for admitted patients, it doesn't have the capacity, the technical capacity to accept cardiac monitoring. So I know of a case of a patient who came in with we suspected that she had a stroke. If you've had a stroke, it's very important that we monitor your heart for arrhythmias because abnormal rhythms, I should say, because we know that they can cause clots to form and go to the brain and cause aneurysms and strokes. That space doesn't have the technical capacity to support the cardiac monitoring. So the care of those patients in that space is being determined by where we can put them, not what they actually need. So virtual spaces and home care and stuff, yes, obviously certain things can be managed at home, but not everything can. And as I said, the fact that we have a dramatically lower ED admission rate compared to other comparable sized hospitals is proof positive that we don't have the beds that we need, the actual physical beds in the spaces that we need.
Thank you, Mr. Hudson. And my second question to you is, how is the ongoing issues at the hospital affecting staff morale, but also staff retention?
It's hugely impactful. I mean, if you're a junior nurse, and it's not just nurses, it's doctors too. If you're a new grad nurse or an intern, you know, you're going to want to go to the hospital which has the latest and greatest and the capacity to meet the needs of the community that it serves, or the one that's frankly falling apart, and that there's, you know, is going to be a construction site for the next however long. Of course, you're going to choose the nice flash new one, the one in Tweed Heads, the ones that we're going to we see in Shoalhaven and some of the places in Victoria. I mean, morale is frankly at the lowest point I've ever seen it during my career. As nurses, we look at the plans that we've been presented with, like the master plan from last year, which shows things like we're going to demolish the main corridor of the hospital and we're going to send all of the traffic through the surgical wards. I mean, if you actually look through that document, it doesn't make any sense. We can't have any faith as clinicians that the plan that's been presented is actually drawn up by people who've even been to the site, quite frankly, because it doesn't make any sense. And this has really significant impacts on staff morale and retention, because without having a really genuine plan, which we can see is going to meet the needs of the community, there's less and less hope that things will actually get better.
Sorry, I might have one follow-up question. Sorry, just why this is an amazing opportunity to hear firsthand. So I have a question in regard to some HR issues and nurses being on different awards, but also staff-patient ratios and the New South Wales and Victorian. And can you talk me through some of the difficulties that perhaps poses?
Yeah, certainly. So nurses in Wodonga are paid as according to the Victorian Nurses Award, and nurses in Albury are paid on the New South Wales Award. That means that unlike our Victorian counterparts in Wodonga, New South Wales nurses don't work to a designated nurse to patient ratio like they do in Victoria. So in Victoria, on a morning shift in Wodonga Hospital, every nurse has 4 patients. Those same rules don't apply in Albury. So it's actually ludicrous. I mean, you can have a patient who's too sick for Wodonga Hospital sent to Albury because we are the higher acuity site, but actually the nurse that then looks after that patient is looking after more patients than the one in Wodonga. It's a ludicrous scenario, but that's what we deal with every day on the border here. You know, we've seen nurses in Victoria, this is obviously not really related to the hospital redevelopment, but we've seen nurses in Victoria just win a significant pay rise from the state government there. We're not getting the same in New South Wales, and so it's becoming harder and harder to retain nurses. We lost 13.1% of the nursing workforce from New South Wales last year. We lost them either out of the industry or to Queensland or to Victoria because the pay and conditions are better in those. As a border community, obviously this affects us. It's hugely critical because it is so easy for people to go to Wangaratta or further afield. So we need to do everything that we can to retain staff, not just retain the staff that we have, but make it attractive for new staff to come. I mean, we're talking about building a newer, higher capacity, well, under the current brownfield plan, we're not actually talking about building a higher capacity hospital. But if that is seriously what we're talking about, we do need additional staff and we need to be able to attract them. And we're not going to be able to attract them into a construction site for the next 10 years. I don't know how much clearer I can make that, really.
Thank you for your time, Mr. Hudson. Appreciate it.
Another question, Councillor Bowen.
Thank you. Thank you for your presentation to Mr. Hudson. Just checking, if there was able to be extra funding, could the site that we've got now work? I understand that you shared about the construction zone, but if there could be more funding, would that expedite the process so that we can actually get things on the ground for you?
Not in our opinion, no. The complexity of doing a multi-stage redevelopment on a site that's so constrained like the Albury Hospital is, geographically, traffic-wise, I mean, don't even get me started on the parking. It's so complex. It will cost so much additional money and so much additional time. It's really not worth considering. I'll give you an example. So recently, they built an additional 5-bed negative pressure annex off the medical ward. Negative pressure means the rooms are kept at a different pressure to the rest of the hospital, and it means that airborne pathogens like COVID can't move. Right?
Yes.
During the construction of that 5-bed annex, half of the windows of both medical wards were covered in black builder's plastic. Now, that meant that those patients had access to no natural light for the duration of their stay. That might not sound like a big deal. If you're an elderly person and you're at a risk of infection or, you know, you've got dementia already, the risk of delirium, which is a really serious medical condition, which essentially manifests as just confusion and like aberrant behavior, is dramatically increased if you don't have access to natural light. So while it might not sound like a big deal, if we're going to make this a construction site for the next 10 years, we're going to be continually dealing with those sorts of issues. And as I said before, if you look at the plan as presented in the 2023 master plan, they're talking about demolishing the main corridor of the hospital. I mean, anybody who's been to Albury Hospital knows that that's how you get anywhere in the hospital. And they're going to redirect all of the traffic through the end of the surgical ward. So this means that if you have a medical emergency in bed 6 on Med 1 ward, right, which is essentially the furthest bed from the ICU. So if you have someone has a cardiac arrest and the nurse hits the MET call button, the medical emergency button, the team from ICU is going to have to, rather than just go straight down the corridor unobstructed, apparently they're going to have to move through the surgical ward, literally past patient beds, because I mean, that's the corridor in Surg 1 is just a corridor with bedrooms down the sides of it, past the nurses station, through the pediatric ward, and then past another nurses station, and then down the corridor. I mean, it's ludicrous. It really genuinely, these plans have clearly been written by people who haven't even been to the site. So I don't see how we can have any faith that what has been proposed is good enough. I mean, really, we need to rethink everything, frankly. And we have the time to do it if we can implement interim solutions like the demountables, like a step-down unit at Mercy, which will free up the bed capacity and give us some breathing room to actually do this.
Thank you. So I walked through the corridor today, where the plan was supposed to be, right through to the end of that wall there, to the building, to the end of the hospital, and out around the outside of it as well too. So I understand that the tower will be a new tower though, so it's not going to be refurbished as has been highlighted.
It will be a new tower, but they're proposing to build it on a site where there are existing services already. So Allied Health and Pharmacy exist in the space where the clinical services building is proposed to go. That means we have to decant those departments before we can even build the new clinical services building. We obviously need a pharmacy. We obviously need allied health services. There's discussion that goes around with decanting. Maybe there are some services that can be moved off-site. Sorry, you can't move a pharmacy off-site. Sorry, you can't move allied health, so physios and occupational therapists and speech therapy off-site. They have to remain on-site. So if we're going to decant, frankly, thousands of square meters of existing department to somewhere else on the site, which is already so constrained, to then build the clinical services building, to then in some sort of piecemeal fashion decant the existing wards. I mean, I'll give you the other example, Medical 2, right? There's been...
Conscious we are a little bit
okay, sure.
time, if we could please...
To suffice to say, decanting a hospital while it's operating on a site that's extremely constrained as it is will impact patient safety and patient care.
Yeah. No, thank you. I appreciate that.
Thank you very much for your presentation. Really appreciate
Thanks
the insights.
Thanks for your time, councillors.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Lachlan McKeeman in relation to 9.5 Albury-Wodonga Regional Hospital Project, also speaking for the motion. Good evening and welcome.
Good evening, Mayor King. Good evening, councillors. Thank you very much for the opportunity. I'll apologise for the jacket. I had a much better jacket when I left home this morning, but it's covered in yogurt, thanks to my 2.5-year-old son. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. I, like Jeff, thank you for your words, Jeff. I'm very passionate about this. The 2021 master plan highlighted the opportunity which came with a new single-site hospital for healthcare in our region. The current proposed plan does not meet the recommendations of that plan. The examples are endless, Jeff just had them, of the limitations within our healthcare service currently. It truly is a crisis and we are nowhere near the end of it. As a GP, I see this in what happens outside the hospital doors, and the obstacles to care are endless and increasingly concerning. And my concern for this takes two forms. One, concern for the outcome of my patients, because they're my patients. As a GP, that's the best part of my job. And two, concern for the healthcare service, which I and my young family rely upon. The opportunities for a new single-site hospital overcome so many of the current limitations for healthcare within our community. Questioning the current proposed plan is not a negative approach by clinicians or concerned community for the sake of just wanting a new single-site hospital. It is not a negative reflection on anyone involved in any of our local councils. It comes from the strong optimism of people like myself that we can get an outcome from this plan and this process that solves our current health crisis. It is a way of truly getting into the detail of what we are being offered. And when we compare the current health crisis that we find ourselves in, does it truly provide the solutions that we so desperately need? In my career as a GP obstetrician, I see every single day how our current hospital crisis affects our community. I really want to focus on two key areas. First, maternity and paediatric care. We are a growth area, and I commend councils on both sides of the border for their ongoing work to create a thriving area which draws people to it. However, we are an already undersized maternity unit that's a referral centre for surrounding areas. These include Deniliquin, Cobram, Wangaratta, Ovens Valley, the Upper Murray, Tumbarumba, lots more regions. Our unit is a 6-bed maternity unit that will soon in the next few years tip over 2,000 births per year. As the smaller centres are forced to close due to inadequate staffing, the complexity of obstetrics cases increasing, or general closure and lack of services due to funding. The demand on these 6 labour ward beds and 20 postnatal beds is an insurmountable problem without a new unit of an increased size. The proposed Albury Hospital redevelopment does not increase this capacity. At a time where our maternity unit is having to scratch, scrape and squeeze so much into its current capacity, simply moving it to Albury but offering no increase in capacity will ensure more of the same. This places our healthcare staff, our patients and their families at risk of negative outcomes in what should be one of the truly magical times of their lives. With the proposed special care nursery, the capacity is set to be reduced. With the increasing complexity of obstetric cases we are seeing locally, this includes preterm deliveries, complicated deliveries and sick neonatal patients, our Melbourne tertiary partner hospitals are ever increasingly relying on Albury Wodonga Health as a satellite hospital capable of care from 32 weeks. This cannot be achieved in a unit of smaller capacity. My second point is aged care. I work in facilities in Wodonga, Albury and Yackandandah. I'm sure you're well aware an ageing population accumulates health issues at a rapid rate. They become unwell quickly and quite frequently they require acute hospital care. With the current inevitable daily bed shortages, Jeff's mentioned well, our healthcare teams have no option but to release patients who will ideally still be looked after in an inpatient setting. However, when you have an admission rate of 26%, a bed shortage of 30 to 70% per day, it can't happen. Other comparable sites allow admission rates of 35%. What happens to that 9%? They return to aged care facilities. These facilities are not designed, staffed or adequately resourced for subacute patients. Even for palliative care, our aged care facilities rely on community agency support through GPs like myself and my colleagues and nursing staff to come in to provide that care. That's for people who have a set pathway. We know what we're doing. They're not unwell. They're just being cared for in their latter stages of life. Families attend to not only visit their relatives who are unwell, but they need to give care, whether it's meals, because the nurse is next door looking after an unwell patient who should be able to be in hospital, or cleaning, washing laundry. It's just not a viable option. They need to be inpatients. I once again thank Councillor Callaghan for her motion, calling on all levels of government to really think of the 3 points that she's raised to help us in our crisis.
Thank you for your presentation. Questions? Councillor Bowen.
Thank you for your presentation, Mr. Keenan. That was overwhelming, actually. So in the new plan, no new maternity beds than what you have at this stage. Is that the way I understand? I want to be really clear on that. So at the moment you have 6. Is it beds or rooms or the same sort of thing? Is that suites? Is that how it works?
With the description we've been given,
yes,
with the data available, there isn't an increase in capacity to match the increase in demand on our service.
Yeah.
So when it is delivered, You know, Benalla are birthing less babies. Mansfield can't get GP obstetricians, so they have to defer. Wangaratta's, they've recently revamped their unit. It wasn't increased in size. So those patients, instead of going to Melbourne because Melbourne is overcome, they are able to, if they're over 32 weeks gestation, they technically should come to Wodonga.
Mhm.
That can't happen if we're the same size unit who pre-COVID was delivering 1,600 babies to, in the next few years, delivering 400 more, if not more.
Thank you.
Councillor Callaghan.
Thank you for your presentation, Dr. McKeeman. You mentioned several times single site. Can you clarify what you mean by that? Are you talking fully funded brownfield, greenfield, or are you open to, can you be specific?
I've worked in lots of different areas and worked in Albury Hospital and Wodonga Hospital while they've been building sites for upgrades that have happened since I've been here for 12 years. A hospital as a building site just doesn't work. It compromises health staff in what they can do. It compromises patient care we could be here all night. I really, truly believe that the only viable option to fix our crisis really needs to be a new hospital and a new site, the greenfield option, because we are coming from, and it's no fault of anyone, it's really our council, it's just the way. COVID changed things rapidly and it's changed the scenario. You know, we can't fit what we will need by the time this project is delivered on the Albury site. I'm a strong advocate for that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much for your presentation.
Thank you for the opportunity. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Philip Steele in relation to 9.5 Albury Wodonga Regional Hospital Project, and he will be speaking for the motion. Good evening, Doctor.
Thank you, Mayor King and councillors, for this opportunity to speak. The problem with having a number of clinicians presenting on the same topic is that you're going to hear the same subject details again, but I think they're all really important points to make, and I hope that you take it in that spirit. So I'm a GP also. I've lived and worked in this community of Albury Wodonga for over 40 years now, and I've seen a lot of change. I'm secretary of the Board of Medical Association, and the BMA is an organisation that represents a large group of medical practitioners who are based around Albury Wodonga. And as you know, the BMA has been campaigning for several years for the development of a new single-site hospital that has the capacity to deliver a broad spectrum of hospital services for this large and growing population. You'd also be aware, you could not fail to be aware, that our hospital service is in crisis, starting each day, as you've heard, and the numbers vary, 30 to 40 beds plus in deficit, plus this doesn't mention the 20 beds that are in places, as Jeff mentioned, that were never designed to house patients. Half of the recovery ward is actually occupied with patients who are not recovering from surgery. They're inpatients who are parked there as a bed to be in, which obviously impacts on the workflow in the operating theatre and moving patients out of theatre into recovery. There's 20 or so patients every day who can't fit into the hospital for either elective or now emergency surgery. They're sometimes sent home to await the call to come back and have their operation. The lack of space in the hospital is suffocating, and it leaves us with an elective surgical list longer than that at the Alfred in Melbourne, ambulances ramping every day in our emergency departments and taking their crews away from the communities work in Albury Wodonga and the surrounding towns. The list goes on. So what's clear now is that the proposed building barely covers this deficit, and we'll have to wait till 2030 to see it come to fruition. So the BMA wholly supports Part C of the motion. We need urgent capacity relief now. Not only beds, but also operating theatres. We cannot deal with the number of surgical patients that need to be dealt with the current surgical capacity. And surgery operating theatres can be included in these in these modular units. They're urgently needed. With regard to Part A of the motion, we can understand the thirst for more information. However, The 3,000 pages or so of documents already made publicly available by the New South Wales government clearly demonstrates that our community continues to be compromised. Waiting for the New South Wales and Victorian governments to be transparent about this project is a bit like waiting for Godot. The shovels will be on the ground before they provide transparency, and we need to fight now. The documents demonstrate that there's been a significant cutting back from the original 2021 Clinical Services Plan and Master Plan in order to fit the allocated funding, and that the cutting back is ongoing. The documents show that there's been a failure to recognise that the health service is running over capacity constantly, and there is no provision for growth. A perfect example of the scaling back is the Coronary Catheter Lab. It was only built in 2018, and it was built for the future with capacity for 2 labs in the one space. Only one has been fitted out and is operational. In the new Clinical Services building, we will only have space for 1 cardiac cath lab in a hospital that's supposed to service a population of 300,000 people in a growing way. The intensive care service for the whole of Albury-Wodonga will essentially have reduced capacity when the critical care beds that are in Wodonga are moved into a unit in Albury, which will only have exactly the same number of beds as it has now. The helipad, we've heard about the helipad. It's a vital feature in a major regional hospital which provides a trauma service for a large region. That's gone. Lack of funding. The current plan leaves us just with what we need now, and in many instances worse. What was a detailed, carefully thought out, data-driven, evidence-based plan made in 2021 with local clinician input, as well as Albury-Wodonga Health and both health departments, has repeatedly been stripped back to bare bones to fit into this funding envelope. A couple more points, if I may. The planning projection time is limited to 10 years. That's 2032, only 2 years after the date where this current plan is supposed to be finished, and it's already being value managed. All the evidence is there. Part B of the motion is something that the BMA has been advocating for some time, but with a key difference. What is it that we're fighting for? We're fighting for a commitment to a fully funded new single-site hospital with the capacity that was originally designed in 2021. Commit to this and fund it. Then when you consider how to build it, look at the most timely, cost-effective, future-proofed method without disrupting an already compromised service. Staging a hospital of that size may be feasible to some, but it will result in delays, ongoing escalation in costs, and if it's not working with a pared-back hospital, how's it going to work with building the hospital that we actually need? The inadequacy of the funding and the challenges of the current site will mean that we'll have a complex staging plan. It'll take decades to deliver and cost a lot more money. Money that's not yet been committed and for which we'll have to fight yet again. Healthcare workers will be trying to manage in a construction site for many years, and delivery to our community will suffer. So continuing with the current inadequacies of that bill will only see further compromises whilst kicking the can down the road. So we're always going to be cap in hand for the next stage. So the BMA supports this motion and will work with Albury City Council to seek funding commitments from the Victorian, New South Wales and federal governments to achieve our goal of a fully funded new single site hospital that we all need and we believe should be a greenfield site.
Thank you for your presentation. Councillor Callaghan.
Thank you, Mayor King, and thank you, Dr. Steele, for your presentation. I have a question. BMA had I suppose from the inception, it was the philosophy was a single site hospital, but there's been a distinct shift now to a greenfield site hospital. Can you explain?
Well, as I've explained before, if you decide what you want, which is a new single site hospital, to replace the current one, you commit to the funding of this, and the funding, the dollars were similar when the master plan was developed. Then look at how you're going to do it. You look at doing it on a brownfield site, on the current site, and the disruption and all the stuff that you've heard about and talked about before. Compare that with building it for a similar cost on a greenfield site, build the place, get it ready, then decant into the new site. That's how we're approaching it. We, at the start, we respected the process of the clinical services plan and the master plan and wanted that to, the service plan to inform the master plan and for that to come to whatever conclusion that it needed to come to. The master plan came to that conclusion. The Greenfield site was the preferred site. And there's a very nice table that we can share with you, which was part of that, which was part of the release of documents, which demonstrated the features of the Greenfield site, which were far superior to the Brownfield. So it's the process has led us to the conclusion that the way to do it is to follow the decision that was made in 2021 and to favour the Greenfield site.
Thank you, Dr. Steele.
Thank you. Question, Councillor Baker.
Thank you, Mayor King. Thanks, Phil, for your presentation. I have listened to quite a few of the Better Border Health presentations over the time, and no one ever mentions mental health, Nolan House. No one seems to put any effort into that. What do you think would happen there? And should we be just, as a community, both sides of the river, saying, no, we don't want your money, and just lobby and push and wait and see what happens? That's the flaw in the argument. You'd love a beautiful new, fully funded hospital. They're not giving us enough for this brownfield site. How is it going to happen? And the immediate prospect for Nolan House, which is inadequate, it's antiquated, it doesn't get any emphasis. What are we going to do about that? And what's Better Border Health doing about that?
Well, I agree with you, Stuart, that I mean, we haven't mentioned every single department of the hospital. Mental health is absolutely a key part of this equation, and in a if you do this properly in a new hospital, there will be clearly adequate planning for every department in the hospital, and particularly in mental health. I mean, one of the concerns about the current design of the plan is that the mental health unit is up on the top floor of a proposed new building, and its access to the outside world would appear to be compromised. I don't think, from that point of view, it's not necessarily the best plan for Nolan House. I fully agree that building is inadequate, and that need is acute, urgent, and needs to be addressed as part of this plan. I would never want anyone to think that we were not highly cognizant of the needs of the community with respect to the provision of inpatient mental health care.
Just a follow-up question, and this is only my observation, but ever since we've had the joint cross-border health system, it has never been adequately funded. We seem to be the poor cousin for everywhere else, and we have been from the word go. And, you know, I admire everyone's optimism, but I can't see how all of a sudden we're going to get looked after. And what are you doing about chasing our member in Victoria and our state member in New South Wales to get some action from that point?
Yeah, well, with respect to the local politicians, I think it's absolutely vital that if we are going to make any inroads at a state and federal government level, we absolutely have to have every person in this region, every person who represents the community, to be saying the same thing. While we have a situation where there is not full agreement about what it is that we actually are asking for, then I think we'll struggle. So, I mean, clearly, we as an organisation have been meeting with every local politician at whatever level of government that exists, and having these discussions repeatedly, and we'll continue to do so, and we welcome further discussions. I think an important thing to realise that is that things have changed. Like the information that we now have is different from what we had a year ago. Decisions or positions that were held about this may be able to be changed based on the new information. And I just call upon every member of the community and all our community leaders at a political level to look at this again and review it, and hopefully we'll be convinced, as we have been convinced, that the plan is inadequate and is not going to serve our community's needs.
Any other questions, councillors? Thank you for your
Thanks.
presentation. Our next public speaker is Roger Arnold in relation to CM 13.1 development application 10.2023.0004058.4.001 construction of 6-storey shop top housing building 663 Dean Street, Albury, speaking for the recommendation. Good evening.
Good evening, councillors and fellow Albury residents. My name's Roger Arnold. I'm an Albury resident for 65 years, or fourth generation Albury resident, totaling 140 years in this area. I grew up in Albury, schooling at Albury Public School, Albury High School and Scott School in Albury. I've seen Albury grow over the years and I've always admired the ambulance station building. I purchased it in 2018 with the intention of inner city living. COVID times slowed our progression and now we are ready to go ahead. With my passion for the original building, we work with Albury-based architects Techne and have come up with a plan to incorporate the original building with a modern, stylish boutique building to suit the heritage of Dean Street. In doing this, we came across some concerns which we believe we have addressed. So many Albury residents have approached me and applauded me in making a new home available for not only me, but everyone else. I'm very proud of the boutique design and the legacy it will leave for me and the Arnold family. Councillors, I thank you for your consideration.
Thank you. Co-presenter or just there to help with any questions? With any questions? Sure. Councillors, any questions? Thank you. Councillor Bowen.
Just a question about the height as to the reason for the height of the building being at 22 metres, is that correct? As opposed to 16, which that level of the LEP allows.
Yeah, so in making the application, obviously the site contains a significant building at the front of it. If that building wasn't there, there would be the opportunity to bring the building closer to Dean Street. There would obviously be an ability to spread the bulk out across the site. In working to provide a basement and then obviously fit a usable area of GFA on the site, the building's been pushed back and then it's been increased in height to be able to achieve that. With that as well, around the site, there's also a height limit of 30 metres or 35 metres and a height limit of 25 metres. So this building actually comes in like a bit of an island around those areas, and that's because it's a heritage location. Mm-hmm. So we are coming above what the LEP height is, but we're actually going to sit below what the immediate adjoining properties will be by a few metres.
Thank you. And just to clarify, it is a heritage site, but the building's not a heritage listed building, is that correct?
Correct. It's a heritage conservation area, but not a heritage item.
Thank you.
Thank you. If there are no further questions, councillors, thank you very much for your presentation. Our next speaker is Darren Baldwin in relation to CM 13.2 development application in relation to Brooklyn Fields Estate Thurgoona speaking against the recommendation. Good evening, Darren.
Thank you, councillors. Yeah, my name is Darren Baldwin. I'm a resident of Thurgoona Park. I'm also an aquatic scientist. Why I wanted to had the opportunity to talk to you is to raise my concerns about the stormwater modelling for the Brooklyn Fields estate, as well as the estates along Kerrs Road that are going to come through. Oh, sorry, a bit nervous. So my biggest concern with the modelling is not that it's actually wrong, but they've used, or is incorrect, but they've used the wrong, sorry, they've used numbers that are very much outside what you would normally expect to use. And in doing that, what it means, if my concerns are correct, then the risk of more flooding in Thurgoona, like we've seen in January 2022, those risks will be increased, if I'm correct. So what I'm actually asking council, it's got a laser pointer on it. Yeah. What I'm actually asking council is if they could commission a study to look at stormwater modelling, get some agreed numbers for the growth corridor, which is coming out through Thurgoona, so that we're not getting the death of 1,000 cuts, that every 100 house development uses the wrong numbers. Doesn't matter, you don't get a flood, you don't get a flood, eventually you do get a flood. When I put this presentation together, I didn't realise there was such a short timeline. So I'm just going to quickly jump through, and it's really technical, I'm sorry. So first of all, there we go. First of all, back. It's a critical number as the peak flow. How you calculate how much stormwater runoff you get from these systems is you model how much would have happened without the development, you model how much happens with the development, and from that you can work out how much flood retention you need. The critical number, there's a rational method to do it. The peak flow, the critical things are the area that's being flooded, rainfall intensity, and this coefficient of runoff. More detail there. The issue is that the numbers that they've used for the coefficient of runoff in particular are very unusual. So in the modelling that they've done, the consultant used a value of 0.39. Sorry, I should have said the value for that coefficient goes from 0 to 1. The lower the number, the less the runoff. So I've grabbed this graph. Oh, and they haven't said where that number come from. I grabbed this graph from one of my colleagues, Chris Walsh, who's an international expert on water-sensitive urban design, and which shows the annual rainfall along that axis and the runoff coefficient you would expect for different types of land use. So the site currently is a grassland. So what we have is a world average for grassland, world average for woodlands, and a series of sites that they measured for around Melbourne for grasslands. Rainfall for Albury is about 650 millimetres a year. So the number you'd expect to work out how much runoff happened prior to development would expect to be somewhere in that envelope. The developers used a number which was twice that you would expect without justifying where that number come from. So that says that they're saying that prior to the development, a lot more runoff would have occurred. Then we look at what will happen after the development occurs. So this is for Melbourne urban development sites. These are dots are measured sites. Again, in our 650 mil, we would expect a number around 0.8. They're using a number somewhere between 0.6 and 0.72. That means they're saying that less water will be coming off from their development. So if you compare the numbers that you would expect versus the number that they use, they're saying half as much runoff is going to come from that development than you would expect based on world average for grasslands. There's another issue which I won't go into, which is in any detail, which is the brain intensity. They've used a measurement of 87.5 millimetres per hour as a maximum rainfall event. The January 22 flooding event, it was over 100. So the issue is, and if I can just finish, the issue is this is Woolshed Creek, this is 8 Mile Creek, this is where the growth is. All of this area is going to be developed, and all of that is going to come into Woolshed Creek. All of this development is going to be developed. It's going to go in 8 Mile Creek. You're going to have a blockage here where 8 Mile joins Woolshed, and you're also going to get a blockage of these drains as the water is trying, the water is trying to go through the swales into these creeks. They can't get there because the water's backed up. Sorry, a bit longer than I expected.
No, very informative. I was going to ask if you're available to do a more detailed presentation for our councillor group at some stage.
Yes.
Yeah, no, thank you. Councillors, any questions at this stage? Councillor Bettridge.
Thank you. So just in summary, if I've got this right, the consultant has said that there's a higher runoff on underdeveloped land, i.e. the grassland. And so then he has exponentially said when it's developed, because of the higher runoff on the grassland that's been accredited, the runoff off the hard surface of developed, it comes in lower than what it actually is.
Not quite. But
Not
close.
quite.
So if you use those numbers to develop the size of your retention basin.
Okay.
So council rule says you can't have any more runoff, peak flows, than what would have occurred prior to development. So what they're saying is that prior to development, let's say there was 50 QMEX, whatever, coming off, where if we follow the world average, it would have been 25. And then what they're saying is post-development, that you'd have, say, 100, again, using Melbourne as an example. They're saying, well, it's actually 80. So that the difference is between what should, using normal modelling parameters, you'd get that, but that's how much they'd need to store. What they're saying is, this is how much we need to store. And if you don't store that, it goes into the creeks block up, the drains block up, the stormwater pipes coming into those block up, and we get something that looks like the 2022 flood.
Thank you very much for that. So, and what you're saying then is that in this proposed development, if this is an error, it's only going to be extrapolated out over the rest of it.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
So, and we brought this up when Brooklyn Fields was first proposed, because they used very similar modelling.
Yeah.
And that was discounted by the council at the time. And so what it means is that similar values are being used for these developments, and will be used for these developments, and will be used for those developments. So it's a death by 100 cuts, 1,000 cuts, because 100 houses is not going to make a big difference. 5,000 houses or 10,000 houses will make a huge difference. So that's why I think you got to get the numbers right, and you've got to get those numbers verified independently, so that when all of that development happens, when the next one comes up, the council can say, that's the number we want to use. Let's do the modelling. Okay. So that's my point.
Thank you.
Sorry about that.
No, thank you. Question, Councillor Callaghan.
Thank you for your presentation this evening, Mr. Baldwin. Would you suggest that a higher investment by developers in water retention basins would also aid here?
Well, that's the issue. That's what this is being used to model.
Yeah.
So what it means is I'm not saying their numbers are wrong. I'm just questioning them because they don't fit within the window that you would expect them to. So I better make that quite clear. But what it means is if you've got too small of a retention basin, flooding occurs. If you've got a much bigger retention basin, you can take those the tops off the peaks of the flood events. And so it will stop or limit the amount of flooding. Because it's so flat, water retention basins are about your only option to manage flooding. And as I said, take up too much time, but where the Woolshed Creek and 8 Mile Creek join is within the 100-year flood line. So the houses there have had to be moved up, and that was before the modelling was done before the January 2022 flood event.
Thank you, Mr. Baldwin.
Question, Councillor Baker.
Oh, through you, Mayor King, just to the most appropriate member of staff, what if this has been brought up? What's our response to this been?
Are we happy to maybe bring that up in debate when we're actually sort of debating that? Are you happy to ask that question of the staff at that?
Thank you. Yep.
Yeah, thank you. Just quickly, can you elaborate on aquatic scientist? Tell us what that involves in a general sense.
All sorts of stuff. So I worked for CSIRO at the Murray-Darling Freshwater Research Centre, and then as a private consultant since 1991. I'm involved in projects from the closure of Ranger at Kakadu through to acid sulfate soils down in the southern Victoria. I've been heavily involved with multiple fish kills on the Darling River, including the last one. And I consult to Murray-Darling Basin Authority, New South Wales Natural Resources Commission, New South Wales Department of whatever it is now, Energy, Environment. So I do a lot of work for government. A lot of it's around how water moves, and then when that water moves, what does it do? What does it do to the environment? What does it do also slightly less, but what the social implications of that are as well. So, sorry.
Well, thank you very much for doing a deep dive and sharing your perspectives.
Yes, sorry, it was
in relation to that. No, we were asking lots of questions. So, no, thank you very much. It was very informative and quite interesting. Appreciate it. We now have David Hunter in relation to CM 13.2 development application in relation to Brooklyn Fields Estate stages 6 and 7 in Brooklyn Drive, Thurgoona, speaking for the recommendation. Good evening.
Thank you.
Again.
Back again, councillors. Thanks for the opportunity to talk to you tonight. I'm David Hunter from Habitat Planning, and I'm here tonight on behalf of the developers, Peter and Jane Bowen. Peter's in the gallery tonight as well to hear the conversations. I'm speaking in support of the recommendation. We've reviewed the conditions and we support the conditions that have been applied by staff. Just to give you a bit of a background to why the application's before you. So the first 5 stages of Brooklyn Fields were approved in 2017. Some of the current existing councils might remember that application. It was a very detailed application. There was a lot of work that went into it from an engineering and environmental perspective, and basically enabled the development of the first half of the site. Those first 5 stages are now complete. This next application is for the next 2 stages of the development, and that will generate about 113 lots, which basically equates to about 2 years worth of release from the development. The application is entirely within the R1, the general residential zone. There's no components of it which require works in the environmental zone lands or in the creeks adjacent. The development relies entirely on existing drainage and road infrastructure that's been established in the earlier stages. Due to the fall of the land, the drainage comes back down. So in relation to the presentation we've just heard, prior to the development of Brooklyn Fields, there was an entire drainage strategy prepared. Part of that was around making sure that the engineering was correct from the start, but the other part of that was to actually ensure that we could create about 3% of the site for Sloane's froglet habitat, which has been delivered in the first 5 stages. So this development will continue the flows south, which is important to obviously make sure that we can contain and release that stormwater from the site, but it also makes sure that the Sloane's froglet breeding habitat will function and that there's enough water coming into those locations. This stage of the development also delivers the Reserve 10, which was identified in master planning originally for Brooklyn Fields. It's the central reserve of about 8,000 square metres and is important in the sense that it provides a location where cultural heritage items that were previously identified on site have been reburied. It also retains an area of remnant trees, which were identified in the early stages of the development, and it provides about double the amount of space that was provided in the previous two reserves, which are further south in earlier stages. The development's also sought to minimise the impact on loss of native vegetation within this stage. And there's also been a test of significance prepared for the entire site, which has considered the impact on the 12 additional species outside of the Biodiversity Conservation Act, which were included under the biocertification of the LEP. There's also been assessments of significance undertaken in relation to EPBC items, being the Sloanes, Froglet and Gilgais. And then these stages have been positioned to avoid any impacts on the Gilgai features in the northern parts of the site. The remaining northern part of the site, which you would have noticed on the plans, is not part of this application. The reason for that is that's still under planning between council and the state and federal agencies. It's also affected by the Thurgoona Link Road, which is still in planning by council. So the applicant is working with council on those remaining stages. Lastly, I'd just like to acknowledge the landowners' work and that they've worked cooperatively with both council and the New South Wales Department. I think they call themselves DQ at the moment, but were OEH at the time. The work that was undertaken in the first stages of the development were around developing an overall master plan for Sloanes in particular. That was undertaken at a time when the guidelines didn't exist. And the site was actually developed in parallel with those stormwater guidelines and are now applied to development sites in Thurgoona. And this site is regularly identified and used by the state organisation as a benchmark for how these types of developments should be delivering Sloanes habitat. So the developer is continuing to work cooperatively with council and all levels of government to ensure that the outcome for this site is a positive one. Thanks. I might leave it there and happy if there's any questions.
Thank you. Councillor Gluckin.
Thank you, through you, Madam Mayor. Thank you for your presentation, Mr. Hunter. Mr. Baldwin, is that my time up? Mr. Baldwin asked or made reference to the factors used, and you have referred to that in your presentation. Can you confirm how it is? I understand that you said the water runs downhill and we've already got the drains there, or you've already got the drains there in place because that was part of an earlier, the earlier development. How is it that you are confident? What are you relying on that this number issue is not a factor in this development? May very well be, as raised by Mr. Baldwin for another part of the area, but how confident are you? What are you relying on that it's not part of this factor?
Yeah, sure. I'm not an engineer and I'm not across all of the issues that were just spoken about. I'm only a humble town planner, so I rely on the information that's given to me by our consultants. So my understanding is that the coefficient that's been used in calculating the stormwater is based on the guidelines that all developments rely on. I don't have a position as to, dispute anything that's been put before you, other than that is what we have to design to. And that's the information that's been put in front of us. So that's really all I can say on that.
That's fine. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Callaghan.
Thank you, Mayor King. And so a question that was raised with me within the last week, that there was an incident near Brooklyn Fields, and there's one real entry point and one exit point. And I know in time and over time that there is an extension of that Kerrs Road, which is looking to come around, that is unsealed at the moment, to my knowledge. Yeah, it just was presented to me as a safety concern at the moment that people don't usually use that access point and feel like if there was an emergency that there is that one road in and out. How long until it is likely that that road connects and is sealed for people that live in that area?
It's a great question. Certainly at the start of Brooklyn Fields, it would have been the view that by the time we were at stage 6, that road would be provided. Certainly the landowner is very keen for it to be delivered. I understand that, again, it's not a project that the developer has control over because it's the Link Road project that council have some involvement on. Other than our willingness to work with council, and we have been talking to staff as much as we can about what we as our client as developers can do. But I take your point about the safety aspect, and there is a road, there's an emergency egress road that the RFS require for the basically in an emergency situation to come out onto Kerr Road, which functions. There was a situation, it might have been the one you're referring to, the accident at the roundabout. It did require people to go out of that location. It's not a great outcome for over a long period of time, but it was suitable in an emergency.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bowen.
Thank you. Thank you, David, for your presentation as well too. And just based on our previous speaker, Mr. Baldwin, in regards to your parameters that you're using for your coefficient, obviously there'd be a tolerance within that. Do you know whether you're on the high side or the low side of that tolerance?
I don't know. I can't answer that question. All I know, or all I can tell you confidently, is there's a drainage strategy prepared. I do know in the southern part of the site there were flood issues in that we had additional capacity we had to cater for within the earlier basins that were constructed. I think it'd be a pretty safe thing to say there would be tolerances in all of the drainage infrastructure that we provide. But again, council engineers may be able to answer that question.
And just a quick follow-up, for the 2022 floods or rains, how was Brooklyn Field impacted?
I think it performed pretty well. I mean, everywhere had fairly localised flooding. I'm not sure whether Peter can tell me whether there was any significant issues. I don't think there were. No.
Narrow houses got flooded.
Yep.
All the waters ran down the drains and the road as they were designed to.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks very much for your presentation.
Thank you.
And that concludes our public forum. Given that has gone for a period of time, we might take about a 5-minute break and return with our council meeting. So we'll adjourn for about 5 minutes. Thank you.
Yeah, that's true.
Oh, we haven't even started.
You gonna get going anytime tonight?
Yeah.
A lot of information.
That's been brought into the project by the two.
Everyone saw it as an opportunity to get credit funding and all.
Good evening. We will resume proceedings for tonight. And Councillor Cameron, I do see him on board. Good evening and welcome to the council meeting being held in the council chambers for this Monday, the 12th of August. We'll start with the opening affirmation and acknowledgement of country. We gather to represent the people of Albury who have entrusted us with this task. May our efforts be blessed with insight, wisdom and common sense. May our personal values give us honesty and courage to serve our community effectively and with respect for all. We would like to acknowledge the Wiradjuri people as the traditional custodians of the land that we meet upon today and pay our respects to the elders past, present and future, for they hold the memories, culture, tradition and hopes of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people that contribute to our community. This council meeting is being webcast and recorded. By speaking at the council meeting, you agree to being recorded and webcast. Please ensure that if and when you are speaking at this council meeting, that you are respectful to other people and use appropriate language. Albury City accepts no liability for any defamatory or offensive remarks or gestures made during the course of this council meeting. An audio recording will be made for administrative purposes. Item 3, conflict of interest declarations received and disclosure of political donations. Mr. Zachnich.
Thank you, Mayor King. No declarations received for this meeting. Item 3.3, advice to the council meeting regarding political donations. The Environmental Planning and Assessment Act 1979, Section 10.4 requires a person submitting a planning application or submissions regarding a planning application to disclose any reportable political donation and or gifts to any local councillor or employee of the council. Reportable political donations include those of or above $1,000. Disclosure statement forms are available on the council's website. In dealing with development applications, councillors need to take into account specific planning matters contained in the Act. Accordingly, the provisions of Section 4.151 of that Act are set out in the Council Officer's report detailing planning issues to be considered. The Local Government Act 1993, Section 375A requires that a division be called whenever a motion for a planning decision is put at a meeting of the Council. Planning decision means a decision made in the exercise of a function of Council under the Act, including a decision relating to a development application, an environmental planning instrument, a development control plan, or a development contributions plan under that Act, but not including the making of an order under Division 9.3 of Part 9 of that Act. Thank you, Mayor King.
Thank you. CM4, apologies. CM 4.1 rather. We have no apologies, sorry, that's we have none. My error. CM 4.2, attendance by councillors at meeting by audio-visual link. Councillor Callaghan.
Thank you, Mayor King. I'd like to move the recommendation that council receive, note and accept the attendance of Councillor Cameron via audio-visual link for the meeting.
Thank you. Councillor Bettridge.
Happy to second the motion, Mayor King.
Thank you, councillors. I'll put the motion. Those for? Those against? That motion is carried. Thank you. CM5, mayoral minute. We have no mayoral minute. CM6, action plans. Councillor Thurley.
Thank you, Mayor King. I move the following action plans be received and noted. 1, actions complete for noting only. 2, actions awaiting response from external parties. 3, actions in progress, and 4, long-term issues more than 3 months.
Thank you. Councillor Gluckham.
Happy to second that, Mayor King.
Thank you. Councillor Thurley, did you wish, any councillors wish to speak to this one? If not, I'll put the motion. Those for, those against, that motion is carried. Thank you. CM7, confirmation of minutes of previous meetings. CM 7.1, minutes of the council meeting held on Monday, the 22nd of July, 2024 at 6:58 p.m. Councillor Bettridge.
Through you, Mayor King, I'd like to move that the minutes of the council meeting held on Monday, the 22nd of July, 2024 at 6:58 p.m. be confirmed.
Thank you. Councillor Gluckham.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Happy to second that.
Thank you, councillors. If there is no one wishing to speak to those minutes, I will put the motion. Those for, those against, that motion is carried. CM8, reports from community forums. There are none. CM9, notices of motion, notices of rescission. CM 9.1, notice of rescission, conservation zoned lands review. Councillor Glacken.
Thank you. Through you, Madam Mayor, to move the recommendation as a motion that Council rescind resolution Council meeting 13.4 of 22 July 2024.
Thank you. Councillor Baker.
Second the motion, Mayor King.
Thank you. Councillor Glacken, did you wish to speak to it?
Yes, very briefly. I believe, councillors, that we have made a decision that will not stand up for our community. And I believe that we should rescind the previous resolution and then draw on a new resolution, which I propose to provide, and that being that we go back to the original motion from the last council meeting.
Thank you, councillors. Question, Councillor Edwards.
Thank you, Mayor King. Through you to the relevant member of staff. Can staff respond to the questions raised by Ms. Driver in the public forum, particularly with regard to the consultation with landowners and communication of eligibility?
Thank you for the question, and through you, Mayor King. The planning proposal was subject to a lengthy and complex process. Over 1,500 submissions were made, over 2.5 months of engagement with community. And despite the concerns expressed, administration considers that sufficient and appropriate engagement was undertaken as part of this process.
Follow up? No. Councillor Callaghan.
Thank you, Mayor King, and to the most relevant staff member. We're 20 months post the other cutoff date, when 455 lots were identified for change within the review. Why did Albury City Council not seek external support to speed up the process?
Mr. Wilson.
Through you, Mayor King, thank you for the question. It simply again relates to the complexity of the planning proposal, and attempting to manage that was considered something that the staff could successfully undertake, and the matter should be kept as narrow as it was, or as wide as it was, and continued through the process.
Thank you. Follow up?
If I may. Another question in regards to the local planning authority. Why would Albury City Council be seeking this when they're part of the landowner user group? Is this a conflict of interest that Albury City would have?
Mr. Wilson.
Through you, Mayor King, I hope you can hear me. I'm struggling with this switch. It might seem intentional, but I can tell you it's not. And I'm not trying to buy time. The process was taken through the gateway determination. The authority that was given to council included the exercising of local management plan rights. And so we have considered that, and we have, acted consistently with that that recommendation from the state.
Thank you. Any questions, councillors? Councillor Glacken, did you wish to sum up?
Yes, thank you. I'm not wanting us to revisit the significant amount of work that our staff have undertaken, but it is interesting to note that there was a significant amount of work, and it was done in conjunction in many regards with the state government, because we need to ensure that we follow the legislative rigour and procedures that are set out for us. And I believe that our staff have done that. And I believe that we need to be dealing with the original motion again, because we cannot progress this unless we go back to that original motion based on feedback that we've had from the state government since the previous resolution. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Gluckin. We'll put the motion, councillors. Those for? Those against? Oh, in division, sorry. I need to, hands up again, sorry. Those for, councillors Cameron, Thurley, Callaghan, Edwards, Bowen, King, Bettridge, Gluckin and Baker. Thank you, councillors. There is none against. That motion is carried. CM 9.2, Notice of Motion, Conservation Zoned Lands Review. Councillor Gluckin.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor King, to move the recommendation as a motion that Council A, receive and note the feedback received through public exhibition. B, endorse the planning proposal Albury Conservation Zoned Lands Review as exhibited, subject to those recommended amendments as consolidated in attachment 3. And C, provide this report and other relevant information to the New South Wales Department of Planning, Housing and Infrastructure, or delegate to the Minister of Planning in accordance with the Environmental Planning and Assessment Act 1979 EP&A Act, to enable finalisation processes and the making of the amendment to the Albury Local Environmental Plan 2010, inclusive of recommended amendments as consolidated in attachment 3.
Thank you. Councillor Baker.
Second the motion, Mayor King.
Councillor Gluckin, did you wish to speak to it further? Yeah.
Thank you very much. As was suggested at the previous council meeting, the New South Wales government had a cut-off point by which time we could submit our plan, and we needed to do that. Unfortunately, it was not agreed at the last council meeting, but staff did seek feedback from the government, and the government have made it absolutely clear that we need to have our plan forward within the timescale. It's also been made clear, as was it provided to us at the last meeting, that if we didn't make that plan clear, it would need to go back to full consultation, not minor consultation. There's just no opportunity for minor consultation. Full consultation, which will take months, if not years, to enact. We know that we have had, over the years, as staff have been dealing with this, there were thousands, over 1,000 submissions, so hundreds of submissions. It deals with 500 or so properties and a significant number of people in our community. We also know that unless this goes forward, there are further areas that will be inflicted, or further constraints that will be inflicted upon our planning into the future unless we can get this right. And I believe that for the very vast majority of our community who want to take this forward, we need to do so. We need to enable them to move forward. We are also aware, as we had been explained, as had been explained to us at the last meeting, and again for this meeting, we do know that it is possible for people to make individual planning requests for their land that doesn't need to be shackled to this determination that we need to be providing to the government now. I believe that our community is waiting for us to enable this to happen. And yes, it has taken some time for it to come to this stage, to get to this stage, but we cannot allow that to continue any longer. We are the people who are now holding this up. And so I urge councillors to consider moving this forward, allowing our community, a very vast majority of our community who have been impacted by this, to move forward. And for those who do need to take separate measures, for them to be able to do so. Thank you.
Thank you. Question, councillor Bowen.
Thanks, Mayor King. Just through to the relevant member of staff, with Mr. Hunter's presentation, number 3 tonight about his situation of the 40-metre corridor that's now 80 metres, is he able to make a separate submission to have that altered individually at a later stage?
Mr. Wilson?
Thank you for the question, and through you, Mayor King. If you are suggesting a planning proposal, councillor Bowen, then someone can certainly make a separate planning proposal. I would note that the areas affected by the Conservation Zone Lands Review in parts of Thurgoona, Willinga will be considered in terms of sufficiency, adequacy, or potential reduction in widths as part of the precinct structure plan review as well. So this particular area of Mr. Hunter's may well be, will certainly be subject to that and may be affected by the findings of that review.
So just quickly to follow up, then that could be a successful outcome for him as well.
Thank you for the question, and through you, Mayor King. There's certainly an opportunity through that process for changes to conservation zone land. If not, as you mentioned earlier in your questioning, a planning proposal is a possibility. Further, there is the review of the Albury Local Environmental Plan as well, which is ahead of us. So there certainly are opportunities, but of course, everything with time.
Thank you.
Thank you. Question, councillor Callaghan.
Thank you, Mayor King. Through to the most relevant staff member. I have 3. I suppose my first one is a follow-on from councillor Bowens. You've mentioned the Thurgoona Willinga strategy and the LEP reviews. So specifically, when can they do that? So we're kind of in the midst of that Thurgoona Willinga now, and the LEP, it's been pitched at 25, 26, 27 and 8. So specifically, when can they apply, and how would they go about applying for recourse?
Mr. Wilson?
Thank you for the question, and through you, Mayor King. If I understand the question, if someone simply wants to apply for a planning proposal, then they can simply make that application. Our preference would be to encourage people affected by reviews of the planning instruments to take the opportunity to be part of that process. It certainly provides council and the community with an opportunity to have a more considered and broad-based approach to those matters. But perhaps I, based on your look, maybe didn't get the question quite right.
Maybe. So what I'm seeking is there a cost for them to do it through if they put it through the Thurgoona Willinga and also the LEP as a request, there would be no cost in that way. But if they went through the Department of the Planning in a DA, there would be a cost. So I'm trying to ascertain what is the cheapest, fastest, quickest way for them to seek recourse if they are unhappy.
Yeah, through the chair, that's quite right. There is a cost associated with making a planning proposal application. Involving yourself in a local environmental plan review process or a precinct structure plan review process doesn't involve that financial commitment for an applicant.
Thank you, Mr. Wilson. The second question I have, it's been a really long process, 6 years. What does this cost the council to date? Approximately. Very good point.
Question on notice, if that assists. Off the top of the head figure. Thank you.
Thank you. We will take that on notice. Question, councillor Edwards.
Thank you, Mayor King, and through you to the relevant staff member. The New South Wales State Government response to the review was that the planning proposal should include a review and modification of the land use permissibility tables for conservation zones and a review of the Albury LEP aims to make specific reference to the protection of native flora and fauna and to identify and protect vegetated corridors. They also suggested that the proposal incorporate additional specific local provisions that seek to outline, consider and address critical biodiversity matters. So my question is, noting that the review of the land use permissibility and other matters mentioned are out of scope for this review, Can staff confirm that these issues will be addressed in the future LEP review?
Mr. Wilson?
Thank you for the question through the chair. The full scope of the LEP review has yet to be established. But certainly if the direction of council was to incorporate that, I'm certain that would be considered.
Well, it's the direction of the department, so we will be doing it. Yep.
Thanks for clarification. Further follow-up at all, Councillor Edwards?
No, thanks.
No problem. Speaker for the motion, Councillor Bettridge.
You, through you, Mayor King. I have no qualms in supporting the motion that Councillor Glacken has put forward this evening. With the extra time provided since the last meeting, I've had the time to absorb more of the information provided, and I'm comfortable to support the motion before us. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Baker, Speaker 4.
Thank you, Mayor King. I'm also supporting the motion. I know a lot of people have gone through to a lot of trouble getting specific advice, spending money on consultants and working through this process. I know last meeting's amendment was meant in good faith, but I'm really happy to support this today and get it done. Thank you.
Thank you. Speaker 4, Councillor Callaghan.
Thank you, Mayor King. Yes, I'll be speaking for the motion this evening. It's a bit of a twist though. This has not been a positive experience for many community members with the long drawn-out process. And it's been evident here this evening. Communication regarding the determination of the conservation land zones could have been better received by proponents, and some fully unaware of the determination of their property. Council staff have taken this on board and are working to improve the process moving forward. So thank you for listening in that space. The current review of the community participation plan is an opportunity for the community to provide feedback regarding the notification of council planning matters. So that's a way in which people receive hearing about it, whether they want it through email or a phone call. Many people that I've spoken to would prefer someone to pick up the phone and actually call and speak to them. So this survey has now been extended to the end of August, so we can get provision and feedback from people about how they would like to seek that feedback. So thank you for that extension.
Thank you, Councillor Callaghan. Speaker 4, Councillor Edwards.
Thank you, Mayor King. While I also acknowledge that there are many lessons to be learned here about consultation, I do support the Conservation Land Review in principle because of the overall net gain of conservation land. However, I do remain sceptical of the future implications under biodiversity certification scheme. Will these hectares be used in the future to justify the removal of native vegetation and cut down large old hollow-bearing trees in our growth area? I certainly hope not. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Edwards. Councillor Glacken, do you wish to close debate?
Thank you very much.
Happy to put the motion in division. Councillors, those for. Councillors Cameron, Thurley, Callaghan, Edwards, Bowen, King, Bettridge, Glacken and Baker. There are none against. That motion is carried. Thank you, councillors. CM 9.3, Notice of Motion, Affordable Housing Opportunity 7 Catherine Crescent, Lavington. Councillor Callaghan.
Thank you, Mayor King. I'd like to move that the council request a future report from the CEO by December 2024 outlining opportunities such as processing timeframes, review of application fees, review of zoning to support the submission of a proponent initiated planning proposal that may enable future affordable housing development at 7 Catherine Crescent, Lavington on Lot 2 DP 847519.
Councillor Edwards.
Happy to second the motion, Mayor King.
Thank you. Councillor Callaghan, do you wish to speak to the motion?
Yes, thank you, Mayor King. Albury, like most parts of Australia, are facing housing pressures. 7 Catherine Crescent should have been considered as part of the Conservation Land Zone Review. Conservations and emails dating back to June 2017, May 18, prior to the beginning of the Conservation Land Review commenced, were had in relation to this particular parcel of land seeking to be part of the review. There is an opportunity for 51 affordable homes to be built. It is disappointing to say the least that 7 Catherine Crescent wasn't part of the gateway determination, the approval by the governing body to allow the zoning changes to be made in the first place. Affordable housing is crucial to support sustainable communities, provide economic stability, and ensure that the population have access to safe and secure housing. This development at 7 Catherine Crescent is well advanced, and if anyone has been there, they will have taken the opportunity to visit the site, they would have seen a thriving community that has been built there and an opportunity to provide further affordable housing that complements the existing environment. They would also see that the development has sought to keep the natural treescape, which is plentiful, adding to the amenity of the area. Albury City should be actively working with proponents to activate opportunities that will promote affordable housing, social equity, and overall well-being for our community. Affordable housing supports lower income people, their families, the elderly, and marginalised people that are at particular risk of homelessness. Thank you.
Thank you. Speaker 4, Councillor Edwards.
Thank you, Mayor King. As Councillor Callaghan has described, we have an affordable housing crisis in our city. I am very wary of stripping land of its conservation status, but I would welcome the land being considered as part of a rigorous planning proposal process, noting that any planning changes would need to be approved by the state government. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other speakers for or against? Did you wish to close debate or happy to put the motion?
Would like to close, please, Mayor King. Thank you. The site was originally approved in 1979 by the former Albury Development Corporation. In more recent times, Council has approved 2 applications: the modification of original approval to change the split of long-term versus short-term sites on the 5th of August in 2014, and a new development to change the split of long-term versus short-term house sites. A lack of demand for tourism, increasing demand for affordable permanent housing on the 9th of September in 2015. During both of these applications, Council became aware of the significant restrictions that the C3 zoning was having on the development of this land. In summary, the owners of the site cannot convert any more of the short-term sites to permanent sites due to the zoning of the land. This is essentially preventing the creation of 51 new permanent affordable houses. Common sense should be adopted in seeking to support the development of affordable housing in our community for the betterment of its people who live there. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Callaghan. Happy to put the motion, councillors. Those for? Those against? That motion is carried. Thank you. CM 9.4, Notice of Motion, Restricted Premises. I would like to move that a report be provided to a future council meeting outlining the options available to introduce planning requirements and controls related to the development of restricted premises in the Albury LGA, especially the Albury and Lavington CBDs. Councillor Callaghan.
Happy to second the motion making.
Myself off, sorry. Thank you, councillors. Look, it is clear that there were significant community and business concerns surrounding the suitability of a recent restricted premises, and questions were asked: what opportunities does council have to consult and reflect community sentiment and aspirations? So what this motion does is to explore what might be possible through the planning instruments at council's disposal when considering future applications for restricted premises. If supported by my fellow councillors tonight, officers will produce a report outlining options and any associated resourcing and financial investment by December this year. So potentially providing clarity not just for the community, but also for, I guess, the considerable effort that can sometimes go into putting forward these applications for those proponents as well. If there's no speaker for or against, I'm happy to put the motion, councillors. Those for? Those against? That motion is carried. Thank you. CM 9.5, Notice of Motion, Albury-Wodonga Regional Hospital Project. Councillor Callaghan.
Thank you, Mayor King. I'd like to move that Council A call on the New South Wales and Victorian governments to urgently release information to the Albury-Wodonga regional community as to exactly what the $558 million investment in the Albury-Wodonga Regional Hospital Project will deliver and timelines for each component. And B, seek ongoing funding commitments from the Victorian and New South Wales state governments and the federal government in collaboration with our community and health sector to meet the needs of a fully funded single-site hospital on either existing brownfield or greenfield site. And C, call on the New South Wales and Victorian governments to provide urgent interim solutions to meet the immediate needs of the community, such as modular wards and step-down beds.
Thank you. Councillor Thurley.
Second the motion, Mayor King.
Thank you. Councillor Callaghan to open debate.
Thank you, Mayor King. I supported a fully funded single-site hospital, which was originally promised. This is not what we're getting. From Freedom of Information, it is clear a greenfield site was the recommendation. Then announced was a fully funded new single-site hospital. Then a single-site hospital, no more mention of new. Now what seems to be offered is Albury, Wodonga, Mercy Hospital and some modulars if we keep begging. Far from what we originally agreed to as a councillor group. I appreciate the hard work in advocating for a tripartite agreement for a fully equipped and future-proof single-site hospital for Albury Wodonga Health Services and understand that this is ongoing. However, as a community, we are being shortchanged. What New South Wales Health Infrastructure are offering us is not good enough for our community and surrounding areas. If this ill-thought-out project proceeds, it will be a disaster working on a construction site for years to come. Our health workers deserve better than this. I respect the views of the clinicians brave enough to stand up and speak out for what they need and know to be adequate for our community. I can imagine this must come with backlash. Standing up for what is right is never an easy feat, but it is the right thing to do and it is to be commended. The last Infrastructure for New South Wales meeting I attended on the 26th of June was deplorable, telling us the meeting was really a month too early as they couldn't properly answer my questions. At what point will they truly have answers to our questions? At this meeting, the councillor group were informed the release of information would come in July. Well, that has come and gone. The state governments are setting their own deadlines and they can't even meet them. Always pushing back release of information. This is complete lack of transparency. Health is paramount to a functioning society. This is all smoke and mirrors to me, a political game at the expense of people's lives. The current clinical services plan has been axed to meet the budget. It is short-sighted to simply accept what is being offered as remotely appropriate for the size of the catchment that we're in. Victorian government are mismanaging our hospital system and the New South Wales government are watching on as it all plays out at the expense of people's health and lives. We need to build a hospital, which was recommended in the 2021 master plan informed by the clinical services plan. I want more for our community. We should be aspirational in our thinking for a healthy, happy and thriving community. Thank you.
Thank you. Speaker 4, Councillor Edwards.
Thank you, Mayor King, and thank you, Councillor Callaghan, for the motion. My personal view as a resident of this city and as a mum of accident-prone young children is that in light of recent information and the insights shared tonight in the public forum, Council's advocacy position on this matter must change, and that's why I'll be supporting Councillor Callaghan's motion tonight.
Speaker 4, Councillor Gluckin.
Thank you, Mayor King. I'm speaking for this motion because I'm not really certain what is that different from what Albury City Council have been supporting and undertaken over some considerable months now. We have been calling upon the New South Wales and Victorian government and the federal government to work with us to bring us a new regional hospital. So I'm not really sure what's so different with the first component. The second is that we have committed to continue to seek ongoing funding commitments from the New South Wales and Victorian governments, and indeed to continue to seek assistance from the federal government as is listed in the notes from the CEO. I know that there have been calls for interim facilities, and that has been discussed with us. And of interest to me is the fact that it's the New South Wales and Victorian governments who are going to be providing this. And so our advocacy has been there. So I'm happy to support the motion, but I simply want to highlight that I'm not really sure why this motion is here, because it is really for us as Albury City Council business as has been undertaken by Albury City Council. So I'm happy to support this motion.
Thank you. Speaker 4, Councillor Thurley.
Thank you, Mayor King. I got on council in 2012 and the first workshop I attended was addressed by Dr. Peter Vine, and his words at that time were, by 2025 we'll need a new 500-bed hospital. So we've wasted 12 years and got nowhere. Arguing about Victoria, New South Wales, arguing what it is we want or don't want. The answer is we need urgent action for temporary beds and temporary operating theatres, as was outlined tonight. But the long-term solution is not that. We need to get the federal government on board as well. It was noted by one of the speakers that they have contributed money to other hospitals and they should be contributing here. I hear a lot of words out in the community that we've had the member for Farrer for over 20 years. And what are we getting? Not very much, in my opinion. So I believe that this advocacy must continue and get even stronger and stop the cross-border rubbish that affects our both councils, not only in this area of hospitals, but in roads and transport and every other area. It's stupid.
Thank you, Councillor Thurley. Just double checking, no other speakers. Councillor Baker, thank you. Speaking for.
I'm happy to speak for the motion. I don't think it is that different, as Councillor Glacken said. I know there's an election around the corner and it's a good time to have this discussion again. And I think every time we talk about it, it's a good thing. The community is vitally interested. I still haven't got the optimism of others that we can pull it apart and get a greenfield site, but there's nothing untoward in this motion. And it's, I suppose, a little bit stronger than what we've been advocating in the past, but not much different. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Baker. Councillor Callaghan, do you wish to close debate?
Always, Mayor King. Thank you. This is an opportunity to express our views for the very first time in a public forum. So I think this motion in itself is different from the collective approach that we've taken before. Yes, it is also the role of a councillor group to advocate for the people in its community. Listen to the speakers we've heard from tonight. We need a greenfield site to meet the needs of our growing community. We know that the helipad has been axed, meaning we're unable to provide appropriate trauma services. There is a scaled-back cardiac cath lab, one less than what we currently have capacity for. Maternity and neonatal. The 2021 clinical service plan highlights the current number of birthing rooms was intended to support 1,200 births. The number now is closer to 1,800, and as mentioned tonight by Dr. McKeeman, 2,000 per year. Currently, there are 24 beds, 6 birthing rooms and 18 neonatal beds. The redevelopment of the master plan 2023 indicates there will be 1 less maternity bed and 4 less neonatal beds. In relation to the critical care and theatres, there will be no additional ICU, HDU beds. There will be no more additional theatres. We were promised a single-site hospital, and dual campuses is the most significant concern for patient safety. The Australian Health Facility Guidelines benchmarks provide a minimum estimated area. For a brownfield for Albury would be 83,000 metres squared, a greenfield 96,000 metres squared. The 2023 master plan documents 56,600 metres square is required to achieve the full scope of the clinical and non-clinical services on the Albury campus. And there has been an indication that the proposed redevelopment has now been scaled back to less than 30,000 metres squared. We'll wait and see what the finer detail holds, but there should be room for concern. Even the CEO and the chair of the board of Albury Wodonga Health have described the proposition as grossly disappointing and not in keeping with our duty to provide the safest and best care possible to our patients and our community. I hope when Indigo, Tawong and Alpine meet tomorrow, they are also aspirational in their thinking. I support a single site, fully funded greenfield hospital, and I have optimism. Collective efficacy and a shared voice can lead to change. A new hospital on a new site. Thank you.
Councillors, we'll put the motion. Those for, those against. Noting Councillor Cameron is against. That motion is carried, but we will notice Councillor Cameron's objection to that. CM 10, presentations and deputations. There are none. CM 11, reports or minutes of committees and working parties. CM 11.1, minutes of the Companion Animals Advisory Panel meeting of the 12th of June 2024. We have a mover for that, Councillor Edwards.
I move that council receives, notes and accepts the minutes of the Companion Animals Advisory Panel meeting held on Wednesday, the 12th of June 2024.
Thank you. Councillor Thurley.
Second the motion, Mayor King.
Thank you. Councillor Edwards, did you wish to speak to it at all? Thanks. Councillors, any speakers for or against? If not, we'll put the motion. Those for? Those against? That motion is carried. CM 11.2, minutes of the Lauren Jackson Sports Centre Advisory Committee meeting of the 29th of May 2024. Councillor Bowen.
Thank you, Mayor King. I'd like to move that council receives, notes and accepts the minutes of the Lauren Jackson Sports Centre Advisory Committee meeting held on Wednesday, the 29th of May, 2024.
Thank you. Councillor Callaghan.
Happy to second, Mayor King.
Thank you. Councillor Bowen, did you wish to speak to the motion?
Just briefly, if I may. Just good to see that we're looking to appoint a contractor for this application, because the concerns were with the user group of the sporting facility that it mightn't get in before we go into caretaker mode, which is great that it has, and we can start with the project, because there's been a lot of toing and froing about where different user groups are going to go during the construction phase. So hopefully this will give them a bit of certainty. So looking forward to having that happen.
Thank you, Councillor Bowen. Happy to put the motion. Those for? Those against? That motion is carried. CM 12, documents for sealing. There are none. CM 13, officers' reports for consideration. CM 13.1, development application 10.2023.000405840.001, construction of 6-storey shop top housing building at 663 Dean Street, Albury. Councillor Glacken.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor King, to move the recommendation as a motion that council receives the contents of this report and grants consent to development application 10.2023.40584.1 regarding land described as Lot 21 SEC 9 of DP 758013 and situated at 663 Dean Street, Albury, proposing the construction of a 6-storey, 17-unit shop top housing development and strata title subdivision, subject to the conditions contained in the draft determination included at attachment 5 to this report.
Thank you. Councillor Bettridge.
Be to second the motion, Mayor King.
Thank you. Councillor Glacken.
Thank you. I think this is a great development because it provides so many opportunities in one block or one development. The proponent has retained what is rather an iconic frontage to that section of town. Everyone knows where the ambulance station is, and it is really high profile. And a significant part of our social and cultural history. The other is that it's providing shop top housing, and it's something that Albury City Council has been working towards over a number of years now. We've been encouraging people to look at shop top housing because it provides a permanent presence of people living in our city as opposed to just going in and out for work and entertainment. The development provides housing, which is important. And it's not only about needing to have affordable housing provision in our city. That is very important, but we need all sorts of housing provision within our city. The more housing and accommodation facilities that can be built means that there are greater choices for people to choose to live in, and ultimately the cost of housing will decrease. There is a strong link between supply and demand and the cost of housing. I believe that the developer has gone to some length to provide a building that not only looks good, not that we can just approve something on the fact that it might look good, but it looks good, fits within that area. There are some areas that it doesn't quite meet the planning requirements, but they are close and supported by the staff because they actually provide a good outcome for our city. And I don't doubt that there will be other people, other councillors wanting to support this development and indeed speak to this motion tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Speaker 4, Councillor Edwards.
Thank you, Mayor King. Quite happy to support this development as it represents an excellent example of increased housing density in our CBD while retaining an iconic corporate building.
Thank you. Speaker 4, Councillor Callaghan.
Thank you, Mayor King. I'll be brief. Yes, I think it's high density living in the CBD done well. It's considerate to its surrounds and it's excellent use of an existing building. And I fully support this development and others like it within our CBD. Thank you.
Thank you. Speaker 4, Councillor Bowen.
Thank you, Mayor King. I'd like to echo those thoughts as well too. I fully support that and congratulate the developer on the design by keeping some form of heritage value to the site, but also providing some housing and in a boutique style. I just think it's a unique way to go and go forward, and I think obviously our LEP could do with a little bit of a change because I think we need to start increasing our size of buildings.
Thank you. Speaker 4, Councillor Betteridge.
Thank you, through Mayor King. I speak in favour of the motion before us this evening. The applicant should be applauded for the efforts undertaken to repurpose the majority of this significant local social heritage building. This development is appropriate to the context and setting of the site and is consistent with the objectives of the MUI mixed use zone. This development provides a suitable and satisfactory planning outcome, and that gives me the confidence to enthusiastically support this motion. Thank you.
Thank you. Speaker 4, Councillor Baker.
Thank you, Mayor King. Yes, I also support it. And I'm really pleased to see the facade of the ambulance station has been retained. It's not everyone's cup of tea, but I think it looks fantastic. And I only wish we had have done, well, the developer could have done that with the Terminus Hotel. And that was an opportunity missed way back then. So I applaud this developer for getting it right this time.
Thank you, Councillor Baker. Councillor Glacken, to sum up.
Thank you very much. I believe there's been a lot of support I thank the councillors for their support and really highlighting the fact that that facade and that retention of that facade is a game changer in so much as it shows other developers that it is possible. And it's important to keep some of our history, but as this developer has seen able to be able to save it, he's also ensured, or he or she has also ensured that they do not really detract from what they're trying to achieve. And that is development. It was a good compromise to be taller in the middle. Yes, it is taller than the land use indicates, but either side of that development is actually taller, or that LEP is enabling for taller developments either side. So it's a good compromise that in the middle of the building, that's where they've taken their height to ensure that they can make this an opportunity that they can actually take to market. They need to be able to take it to market, otherwise it just won't progress. And emphasising again, retaining that facade is really a significant opportunity for Albury, and I encourage all other developers to consider such opportunities in the future also. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Glacken. We'll put the motion, given this is a development application. I'll call a division. Councillors, those four, Councillors Cameron, Thurley, Callaghan, Edwards, Bowen, King, Betteridge, Glacken and Baker. There are no councillors opposed. That motion is carried. Thank you. CM 13.2 Development Application 10.2023.4057 114 Lot Torrens Title Subdivision Brooklyn Fields Estate Stages 6 and 7 Brooklyn Drive, Thurgoona. Councillor Thurley.
Thank you, Mayor King. I move that Council A receives the contents of this report and B grants consent to development application 10.2020. How many zeros? 0.1 and details of development application subject to the conditions contained in the draft determination included at attachment 5 to this report.
Thank you. Councillor Gluckin.
Thank you. Happy to second that.
Thank you. Councillor Thurley, did you wish to speak to the motion? We do have a question.
If there's a question, I'm happy to. have the
Question first. Question, Councillor Edwards.
There are 4
Oh,
questions.
sorry, multiple questions.
Would you, what would you like me to do?
We can listen in.
He's going to speak.
Oh, all right. Councillor Thurley will speak to the motion and then we'll have some questions. Thanks.
This is a growth area. This subdivision is a continuation of what we've already seen before. I note in the forum some questioning about runoff. I quickly looked up the runoff coefficients for the rational formula, and for agricultural pasture land, heavy soil, it's 0.15 to 0.45, so it falls well within the range that our consultants used in, or the consultants, the developer used in that report. So I don't see that runoff or flooding is a significant issue. I fully support it. We need that area is going ahead and we need it to continue.
Thank you. Councillor Edwards.
Thank you, Making. Through you to the relevant member of staff. The statement of environmental effects in the agenda papers is marked as revision 1, dated the 23rd of November 2023. In the response to request for information letter dated the 18th of April 2024, there's reference to revision 2. Why wasn't council provided with the updated version of the statement of environmental effects?
Thank you for the question, and through you, Mayor King. I understood that statement of environmental effects to be the relevant version for consideration by council, but I can take on notice if you consider it the incorrect version.
Thank you. Second question. The documents in the agenda allude to an Environment Protection and Biodiversity Conservation, or EPBC Act 1999 assessment report and a Sloan's Froglet habitat plan. Why haven't these documents been placed on public exhibition, and why haven't councillors been provided with these critical documents?
Thank you for the question, and through you, Mayor King. These matters were considered generally in the context of the development, but weren't specific to this application. The assessment itself relies upon the test of significance submitted with the application and also the servicing and drainage strategy plans provided with it.
Thank you. Third question. Conditions B5 and D3 of the draft determination require the construction of a connectivity swale for Sloan's Froglet. These conditions refer to a 2023 hydrological assessment report commissioned by this council for the Thurgoona Link Road, which is an adjacent development. I assume to assess the impacts of that development on seasonal herbaceous wetlands or gilgais. Why haven't councillors been provided with this report?
Through you, Mayor King, that particular document was not considered determinative to the application. The application relies on the test of significance that was submitted with the application. And that particular assessment is simply used as a locating factor for the gilgai rather than in order to determine its status.
Thank you. And last question, can staff respond to the questions raised in the public forum, notwithstanding Councillor Thurley's double checking, specifically the concerns about the need for updated stormwater modelling more broadly?
Phoning a friend.
Through you, Mayor King, and I appreciate that comment as well. Thank you for the question. There was a brief discussion regarding the coefficient, and as alluded to by Councillor Thurley, it was considered within range. The application itself was assessed in accordance with our engineering guidelines by our development engineering team and considered to be suitable for this stage of the assessment. It should be noted that the application, should it be successful, will also be the subject of a subdivision work certificate, which will provide additional detail with respect to modelling. And so if there's any additional requirement, it would be anticipated at that stage.
Thank you, Mayor King. On the basis of those answers, I have an amendment. Would you like to deal with that now?
Yes, happy to deal with that now.
Councillor Thurley spoken.
Councillor Thurley has spoken to the motion. Yep, so the procedure is fine for your alternate motion? Amendment, sorry, amendment.
Thank you, Mayor King. So my amendment is to part B, and that is to resolve to defer consideration of development application 10.2023.40579.1, which is different to what we had before. I'm assuming that's correct. For 114 lot Torrens title subdivision of lot 479 in DP 1284714, Thurgoona in 2 stages, Brooklyn Fields stages 6 and 7, and requests the applicant and developer to consider referral to other agencies and provision of further detail and amended plans on the following matters prior to final determination by council. 1, referral to the Commonwealth Government under the Environment Protection and Biodiversity Conservation Act 1999, or further evidence that referral is not required. 2, Sloan's Froglet Habitat Plan prepared by SJE Consulting and evidence of support of that plan from the New South Wales State Government's Biodiversity Conservation Division. 3, evidence of support for proposed Sloan's Froglet habitat mitigation measures from the New South Wales State Government's Biodiversity Conservation Division. 4, demonstration of how the development incorporates water-sensitive urban design. 5, additional long-term mitigation measures for Sloan's Froglet habitat loss to be developed in consultation with the New South Wales Government's Biodiversity Conservation Division and in accordance with the Sloan's Froglet Stormwater Wetland Design Guidelines. And 6, consideration of further amendments to lot layouts to provide greater connectivity for the movement of Sloan's Froglet, connecting the seasonal herbaceous wetlands to the C3 lands, including the retention of the existing dam as per council's request for information or further information 2A.
Sorry, just checking procedural. A seconder for that motion? Amendment, sorry. Thank you. Councillor Callaghan.
Wait a second, Mayor King.
Thank you. Councillor Edwards, did you wish to speak to it?
Yes, please. A number of nationally threatened communities and species have known or potential habitat within this DA area. An up-to-date significant impact criteria assessment is required under the Commonwealth EPBC Act to assess potential impacts on seasonal herbaceous wetlands, box gum woodland, floating swamp wallaby grass, regent honeyeater, swift parrot, grey-headed flying fox, gang cockatoo, and Sloan's froglet, which are all either critically endangered, or vulnerable. Councillors have not been provided with this assessment report, although it is referred to in the agenda papers. In the response to further information at attachment 3, council staff state that the potential impact of this DA on matters of national environmental significance is high, and that despite the proposed mitigation measures, the impact on Sloan's froglet is likely to be significant. However, this project has not been formally referred to the Commonwealth Government under the EPBC Act. Councillors have not been provided with a reason for this. It is noted that discussions about the overall Brooklyn Fields development with the Commonwealth Government are ongoing. It appears that stages 6 and 7 are being rushed through despite these unresolved discussions, and the applicant does not appear to have adequately addressed Council's request for further information on this matter in Table 1 of Attachment 3. The proposed Thurgoona Link Road project that is adjacent to the DA area has been determined as a controlled action by the Commonwealth Government because it is likely to have a significant impact on the seasonal herbaceous woodlands, floating swamp wallaby grass, box gum woodland, and Sloan's froglet. The flora and fauna surveys conducted in 2020 and submitted as a part of that EPBC referral for the proposed Thurgoona Link Road confirmed the presence of a nationally significant community, the seasonal herbaceous wetland, within the study area. These documents are available on the EPBC website, but were not provided to councillors as relevant background to this agenda item. The assessment of threatened species within the study area is not complete. The test of significance covers a study area much larger than the proposed development application area. The test of significance also does not consider regent honeyeater that has important mapped habitat in the Thurgoona area. This gives a false impression that the development would have a negligible impact on threatened species with the recommended mitigation measures. However, these measures only apply to stages 6 and 7. The mitigation measures for Sloan's froglet are vague and unlikely to mitigate the major habitat loss and hydrological impacts associated with all the future residential development at Brooklyn Fields. There is also no evidence that the mitigation measures will be effective. The proposal to create swales, including culverts along and beneath Kerr Road, as per condition B5 of the draft determination, are not appropriate long-term measures and do not account for the potential construction of future roads such as the Thurgoona Link Road by this council. The proposal to encourage fauna to move closer to major roads seems counterproductive to their protection. There is also no mention of the Sloanes Froglet Stormwater Wetland Design Guidelines with regard to the proposed mitigation measures. Councillors cannot make informed decisions about this development without all the required information. We haven't seen the Sloanes Froglet Habitat Plan. We haven't seen the hydrological report on the basis of several key conditions in the draft assessment. We haven't seen the significant impact criteria assessment report referred to in the agenda papers. Discussions with the Commonwealth are ongoing, according to the further response for information, and the substance of those discussions remains unclear. Our own Thurgoona Link Road project, adjacent to this DA, has been determined as impacting on matters of national significance, and it has not yet been approved. It is unclear if the Sloanes Froglet mitigation measures have been endorsed by the state government or developed in accordance with appropriate guidelines. The DA lacks long-term measures for Sloanes Froglet. And, as we've heard in the public forum, there appears to be some issues with the stormwater modelling used for this development. We need more housing in this city, but developments in our city need to be done right. And I can see that there are some positive environmental outcomes with this development. However, I argue that the risk associated with approving this DA as it stands and without all the required information is too great, and this council must defer the application until the required documentation is provided so that councillors can make an informed decision. Thank you.
Thank you. Question, Councillor Gluckin.
Yes, thank you. Through you to the most relevant member of staff. My question is, there are a number of points raised here by Councillor Edwards. One is with reference to Sloanes Froglets. Other is with reference to, can you scroll down, please? No, all good. Thanks, Ross. There was something else other than, okay, with the biodiversity. My question is to the council staff, have those aspects been taken into consideration when reviewing, when the planning staff have reviewed this application?
Thank you for the question, and through you, Mayor King. So in terms of Sloanes Froglet management, and this was described in the public forum as well, the areas of stages 6 to 7 rely upon the already developed Reserve 8 and the improvements proposed to or required to Reserve 8, which are established in conditions of consent as well. And there is also reference to compliance with the Sloanes guidelines in conditions of consent too. Just generally, there are, like I mentioned, a range of amendments expected to the reserve. In addition, there is a condition which was also referenced by Councillor Edwards, it's condition B5, which is to retain some connectivity between the creeks on either side of Brooklyn Fields. And so that was added in discussion with BCD around design. And so they have been heavily involved in at the state level in this application, including a number of on-site meetings, particularly with respect to Reserve 8 and its function. So the conclusion on an environmental assessment is that the subject development deals with Sloanes Froglet management appropriately.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other speakers for or against? Speaker against, Councillor Gluckin.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yes, I speak against the amendment and for the motion. And I speak against the amendment because I believe that our staff have undertaken this work as part of their due diligence when looking at this application. It's a continuation of a development or a series of developments, and it has benefited from part of the prior work done with the biodiversity program for Albury City Council. I also noted in the report that 19 large remnant trees will be retained, etc. I believe that this is a good outcome for Albury City, as has been raised by Councillor Thurley. This is an area that will be developed for housing. We need housing, and we know we need housing. This location has been earmarked for some time, and the developer has gone, I believe, has gone to some lengths to ensure, noting the content of the report that we were provided with, has gone to some degree, considerable degree, to ensure that this is a good development, fits the location, will provide housing into the future, and has taken into consideration a number of significant natural aspects and is providing for those with this development and the other related developments that they have in conjunction with this one. So I cannot support the amendment and would, however, support the original motion. Thank you.
Thank you. Speaker 4, Councillor Baker.
I did fully intend to support the original motion and recommendation. However, on listening to the amendments, I'm in two minds, and I think a deferral is not such a bad outcome to get satisfactory answers on these points.
Councillor Edwards, did you wish to close?
Yes, thank you. I take the decision-making powers of this council very seriously. Not all councils have the powers to make determinations on DAs. So when I read our agenda papers, I do so very thoroughly, and where there is issues, I'm happy to call them out. I'm not saying this is a bad development, but I'm saying that we need all the information that this Statement of Environmental Effects gives us, and we need all of the information that the staff's draft determination conditions are based on in order to make proper decisions with due diligence. So I would encourage councillors to support this motion until we can receive such information. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Edwards. Happy to put the amended motion to the group. Councillors, those for? In division, do I need to do that at this point? No. Those against? That amended motion becomes the motion. So that is carried. Is there further debate on the motion now? Well, happy to put the motion, councillors. Those for? Those against? That motion, oh, this is in division, isn't it? Apologies, councillors. Those for? Councillors Callaghan, Edwards, Bowen, Betteridge and Baker. Those against? Councillors Cameron, Thurley, King and Glacken. That motion is carried. Thank you, councillors. CM 13.3 Development Application 010.2023.000405111.001 Animal Care Facility, Car Park, Vegetation Removal and Demolition of Existing Buildings, 595 Mudge Street, Hamilton Valley. Councillor Edwards.
Thank you, Mayor King. I move that Council A receive the contents of this report and B grants consent to development application 10.2023405111.1 for animal care facility, car park, vegetation removal and demolition of existing structures on site on land situated at 595 Mudge Street, Hamilton Valley, subject to the conditions contained in the draft determination, included attachment 4 to this report.
Thank you, Councillor Thurley.
Second the motion, Mayor King.
Thank you, Councillor Edwards.
Thank you, Mayor King. This development represents great progress for our furry friends. It will mean more capacity, support for people and their pets when they're doing it tough, more adoptions and reduced rates of euthanasia. This project has the support of the Companion Animal Advisory Panel, and I look forward to seeing it commence.
Thank you. If there's no comments for or against, we'll put the motion, councillors. Those for, those against, that motion is carried. Thank you. Oh, division on that as well. Sorry. Yes, correct. That was unanimous, I believe. So all four councillors, Cameron, Thurley, Callaghan, Edwards, Bowen, King, Betteridge, Gluckin and Baker, none against. Thank you. CM 13.4, Lauren Jackson Sports Centre Redevelopment Stage 1 Construction Contract. Councillor Gluckin.
Thank you. Through you to move the recommendation as a motion that council, pursuant to section 1781A of the Local Government General Regulation 2021 New South Wales, resolves to accept the tender from Zorna Construction Proprietary Limited and awards the Lauren Jackson Sports Centre Redevelopment Stage 1 construction contract number 23/01093 for the tendered lump sum price of $14,527,658.20, including GST.
Councillor Bowen.
I'd like to second that motion, Mayor King.
Thank you. Councillor Gluckin.
Yes, this is a big contract, but it's a big opportunity for our community. This is something that we've been talking about for a very long time at council, and that is future works at the Lauren Jackson Sports Centre redevelopment. And this is stage 1 of what will be 2 stages. This has been discussed for a number of years. A number of councils have been involved in this development work as it's been brought forward to this stage. We have funding we've been provided with some funding, which is absolutely fantastic, and Albury City is also putting in funding. The facility had become somewhat aged. The flooring needed to be replaced. The roof has been repaired over a number of years, over a number of times. But the reality is that it had reached the point where we needed to do considerable work. And of course, this is also the very location where stage 2 at some stage will be brought forward, or it's envisaged that there will be stage 2, and that will work with some other components with the Lauren Jackson Sports Centre, including other areas of sporting activity. And I won't labour the point too much, but the stage 1 needs to be done to enable us to then move on to stage 2. Stage 1 ensures that the groups who currently use the facility will have their needs met in the short to medium term, and definitely into the longer term. That will then enable us to progress the other stage as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Speaker 4, Councillor Bowen.
Thank you, Mayor King. I speak for this motion as well too. Not only does it provide a great outcome for that facility, it also provides a safety runoff space for the netball as well too, that it will be realigned within that, and also provide a bigger facility for people to view the basketball as well too. And I'd just like to also make note of the Olympic bronze medal for Lauren Jackson as well too, for that centre. I think is a great fitting tribute to make sure that we continue to build on that fantastic base. So yeah, I speak for the motion and look forward to the stage 2 phase as well too.
Thank you. Happy to put the motion or sum up?
If I could add a couple of extra points. This will provide us with better facilities, greater facilities, enable more people to be able to use these facilities with a wider range of sports as well. And it will set us up for what will be stage 2. There is also an advantage in this facility because it would enable us to utilise this on occasion, or consider utilising this on occasion for other large events, not necessarily only sporting, but being able to use this large facility will become an advantage in the future. Thank you very much.
Councillor Glacken will put the motion. Councillors, those for, those against, that motion is carried. Thank you. CM 13.5, supply only or supply and delivery of crushed rock contract 24/01591. Councillor Thurley.
Thank you, Mayor King. I move that council pursuant to section 178 1A of the Local Government General Regulation 2021, New South Wales resolves to accept the tender from Burgess Earth Moving Proprietary Limited for schedule of rates contract 24/01591, supply only or supply and delivery of crushed rock 2024 to 2027 at an estimated total value of $2,350,720, including GST.
Thank you. Councillor Glacken.
Happy to second that. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Thurley, want to speak to it at all, or
No, not really.
any councillors speaking for or against? If not, we'll put that motion. Those for, those against, that motion is carried. Thank you, councillors. CM 13.6, Oddies Creek Park, Splash Park, feasibility and draft stakeholder engagement plan. Councillor Callaghan.
Thank you, Mayor King. I'd like to move the recommendation that Council A receive and note that Oddies Creek Park Splash Park feasibility study, attachment 1 and contents of this report, and B, endorse the Oddies Creek Park Splash Park stakeholder engagement plan, attachment 2, and progress community consultation to inform the concept design of further consideration by council. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Glacken.
Very happy to second. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Callaghan.
Yes, this is a fun one. I'd love to speak for it. Our community has been asking for a splash park for years, and this will be a welcomed addition, I'm sure, when we get the feedback from our community. Splash parks provide a safe and accessible environment, ensuring everyone can participate and enjoy water play. It is also in line with our Inland Waterways drowning prevention strategy, which is an added bonus. Splash parks promote physical activity, social interaction, and heat relief. These benefits will make splash parks appealing recreational options. These benefits make splash parks appealing recreational options. Our community will benefit from a fun and safe recreational option to water play. Thank you.
Speaker 4, Councillor Thurley.
I don't have much to say on this one, except that people should remember this is putting out for your consideration. This is not a finished, final, determined plan, as was the case with Norriel Park, but people got it wrong and immediately attacked council. This is your chance to say what you would like the splash park to look like.
Thank you. Question, Councillor Glacken.
Thank you. Yes, through you to the most relevant member of staff. There was mention in the report about the requirements to ensure that it was protected from, the infrastructure was protected from flooding, but it made reference to the pumping facilities and suggested possibly co-locating the pumping facilities with the toilet facilities that are there at the moment. What about the actual splash park itself? Noting it would be have water on it when it's functioning, but is there an issue with being flooded for a period of time, noting that a couple of years ago, Oddies Creek itself was flooded for a few months?
Mr. Costello.
Thanks very much for the question, Councillor Glacken, and through you, Mayor King. So the feasibility study that was provided outlined, it did investigate a whole range of splash parks across the country, noting that there are some splash parks. There's precedence for a number of splash parks in flood-prone zones, most notably the likes of along the Brisbane River. It's been inundated several times, and they have an ability to remobilise the site after those flood events. And so there's certainly some things that can be undertaken through the construction process to assist with that in expediting recovery from flooding. But our understanding is for the main part that the pumping equipment and electricals and that supporting infrastructure is most essential to be above the 1% annual exceeding probability floodline, which we've identified down there, which would be adjacent to that toilet block area to have that equipment outside of that flood impact zone.
Thank you very much.
Speaker 4, Councillor Bowen.
Thank you, Mayor King. And as Councillor Thurley noted, this is the community's opportunity to give their view. I'd also like to give my view. I'd love to see it. It did speak about 7 months of the year of being mostly operational and then more static throughout the other time. I'd like to challenge the staff and also people to see if we could do it as a 12-month type of a play park or splash park, in a sense that even if it's not a splash park, it could have a light show to it. It could have other, it could be sound activated. It could be something that's utilised that you come and watch rather in the colder months, similar to some others that I've seen throughout the country. So it'd be great to open our minds and our imagination to what we could do it and have it as a 365 day type of play centre.
Thank you. Question, Councillor Callaghan.
Thank you, Mayor King, and through you to the most relevant staff member. In regards to consultation with the community, what are some of the ways in which we're hoping to engage?
Mr. Costello.
Thanks very much for the question, Councillor Callaghan, and through you, Mayor King. Excuse me. We're proposing a 3-stage community consultation process. So initially it'll be about sharing information, understanding some of the community's views on having a splash park and potentially some of those splash park elements. So we'd be undertaking a range of consultations, both on site through our social media platforms, our website. So there would be a range of mediums used to understand the community views. And then the second stage to that consultation process would involve the development of a concept plan that we would bring to council for endorsement as a draft prior to then circulating to the community through our public exhibition process. And that would then help to, I guess, understand and confirm that the community's views had been incorporated into that design, and at that stage then there'd be also a third and final process through the design process as well, just to ensure that the community was still happy with the designs as it went through the design process. And so again, we'd have pop-ups on site and promoting through social media platforms and our website accordingly.
Thank you, Mr. Costello.
Thank you. If there's no further speakers, Councillor Callaghan, do you wish to close?
No, thank you, Mayor King.
In that case, we'll put the motion, councillors. Those for, those against, that motion is carried. Thank you. CM 13.7, 8 Mile Creek Flood Study Review Draft Stakeholder Engagement Plan. Do we have Councillor Glacken?
Thank you. Through you to move the recommendation as a motion that council endorse the stakeholder engagement plan for the 8 Mile Creek Flood Study Review.
Thank you. Councillor Thurley.
Second the motion, Mayor King.
Thank you. Councillor Glacken.
Thank you. Just highlighting that it is a stakeholder engagement plan. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll put the motion, councillors. Those for, those against, that motion is carried. CM 13.8, reclassification and consolidation of title for council-owned land at Ross Circuit. Councillor Bettridge.
Through Mayor King, I'd like to move that Council A approve the reclassification of Lot 56 of DP 581762 from operational to community land use, and B, approves the consolidation of Lot 56 of DP 581762 and Lot 54 of DP 236859 into a single title dedicated as public reserve.
Thank you. Councillor Thurley.
Second the motion, Mayor King.
Thank you. Councillor Bettridge, did you wish to speak to it?
No, thank you, Mayor King. I'd be happy for the motion to be put.
No problems. We do have a speaker for Councillor Glacken.
Thank you. Councillors will be aware that this is the facility that council has helped in the last few years, and considerable work has been undertaken, and there is yet more to happen. And so it's really important that we do undertake this. Thank you.
Thank you, councillors. We'll put the motion. Those for, those against, that motion is carried. Thank you. CM 13.9, Places to Love, Lavington CBD Activation Community Consultation Summary. Councillor Thurley.
Mayor King, I move that Council A receive and note the feedback received during community engagement, and B endorse the preliminary concept design plans for the temporary activation of the Griffith Road car park for a period of 6 months.
Thank you. Councillor Edwards.
Happy to second the motion, Mayor King.
Thank you. Councillor Thurley.
Very briefly, Mayor King, I mean, this money was grant money from the New South Wales government. The one thing I believe that Lavington does lack is any sort of community place, and this takes over a very underutilised car park and would make much better use of it. The community support seemed to be very high in favour of this development, so I commend it.
Thank you. Councillor Callaghan, Speaker 4.
Yes, thank you, Mayor King. I'd like to speak for the motion. Yes, we've received grant funding, but I think it's important to highlight that Albury was actually selected for this grant funding by Transport for New South Wales for all the good work that they've done, all the council has done in that space. But what's not to love about investing in Lavington? It is critical. Activating this space is so important, and it'll really improve the amenity. It's going to be an exciting place for youth with an art alley and table tennis and places to hang out, but also family activation with food trucks and markets and Christmas activation too. So, more activation like this in Lavington will support a positive culture in the urban heart. So, yeah, absolutely excited to love Places to Love.
Thank you. Question, Councillor Glacken.
Thank you. Yeah, I agree with the councillors, and to such a degree that whilst I note that the New South Wales government has said that it needs to be a temporary installation, I'm wondering how creative our staff might be to enable that, if it is a success, that it can continue in some shape, form or otherwise. Happy for that to be taken on notice.
Okay. Thank you. Yes. Speaker 4, Councillor Edwards.
Thank you, Mayor King. It comes as no surprise to me that our Lavington community were largely supportive of this project. A heart or a town square for Lavington was recommended by a master plan for its CBD in 2009. So for quite some time now, the provision of public open space in the Lavington CBD has been a bit neglected by this council. So it's about time that Lavie got its heart. The Lavington community deserve a town square and finally somewhere to put the Lavington Christmas tree that isn't the old car yard of the Five Ways, which will make my mum very happy. This project may be temporary, but it's also my hope that its success will drive an appetite in the community and on council to plan for and fund a permanent CBD open space in Lavington. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Edwards. Councillor Thurley, did you wish to close or happy to put the motion? Happy to put the motion. Councillors, those for? Those against? That motion is carried. CM 13.10, cancellation of council meeting scheduled for the 9th of September. Councillor Thurley.
I really enjoy moving this one. That council endorse the cancellation of the council meeting scheduled for the 9th of September 2024.
We all say all of us. Councillor Betteridge, sorry.
Very happy to second the motion, Mayor King.
Thank you. Does anyone really want to speak to that, or are we happy to put the motion? Oh, sorry, Councillor Baker, sorry.
No, I'm also happy to support it because that close to an election, it could have been a long night. So, yeah.
Thank you. All feedback noted. We'll put the motion, councillors. Those for, those against, and that motion. Oh, a very conscientious Councillor Cameron is against that. That's noted. No problems. CM 13.11, draft revised Albury City related party disclosures policy. Councillor Thurley.
Thank you, Mayor King. I move that council adopts the draft revised Albury City related party disclosures policy.
Thank you. Councillor Glacken.
Happy, thank you.
Thank you. Did you wish to speak to it? Any councillors wish to speak for or against the motion? Happy to put the motion, councillors. Those for, those against. That motion is carried. CM 14, officers' reports for noting. There are No officers' reports for noting. CM 15, delegates' reports for noting. CM 15.1, National General Assembly of Local Government, 2 to 5 July 2024. Councillor Glacken.
Very happy to move that on your behalf, Councillor King or Mayor King, as you are the author.
Appreciate that. Thank you. Councillor Thurley.
Second the motion.
Thank you. Councillors, any comments? Speakers for or against? If not, we will take it as noted and put the motion. Those for, those against, that motion is carried. Notice of urgent business, councillors. We have none. Councillor Thurley.
I move the Yep. That council move into confidential to discuss item 17.1, as this is a confidential item exclusive of press or public on the grounds the matter it relates to. 2, the matters and information are the following. D, commercial information of a confidential nature that would, if disclosed, 1, prejudice the commercial position of the person who supplied it. Local Government Act 1993, number 30, section 10A 2D 1.
Thank you. Councillor Glacken.
I'm very happy to second that.
Thank you, councillors. Are there any statements or submissions from the public regarding the reasons as identified for this confidential item CM 17.1? We have none received. Councillors, we'll put the motion to move into confidential. Those for, those against, that motion is carried. For our live stream viewers, we will now say goodbye, and you can find the outcome of this confidential session in the meeting minutes, which are published on the Albury City website within 2 business days.